Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the Chinese Grand Prix race reaction. How are we all doing? This morning in the UK and this afternoon in Europe and morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Hope you're having a good one today and enjoyed that race. I actually I did enjoy that. I think it was it had its moments of downtime like F1 races tend to do, but I actually really enjoyed that one. Of course, the battle for the lead was non-existent, as you probably expect, but that's something we've come to expect over the last couple of years in Formula One now, I think. But the battling behind was great. Fantastic drive from Lando Norris. We'll get into that shortly, of course. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. Please do vote on the poll, by the way. Rate the race at the moment. Who's winning the poll? Good is winning, 56%, 33% say okay or average, 8% great, 3% if you think it was terrible. Do let me know, though, in that. We'll close that poll a little bit later. Just to let you know as well, yes, we are back to reactions. I still think giving those Monday streams a go was the right thing to do. We tried them. They didn't really work. Some of the feedback was great, some of it not so much. So I thought, you know what? Let's just go back to what we know works relatively well and go back to the race reaction. So first one since Abu Dhabi last year, but we are here and we will be doing these for the rest of this season. And on that note, let's say a very good morning. Just have to double check that then to Stuart. Hello, Stuart.
Hello. Yes, it is still morning. At least. Yeah, that was all right, wasn't it? Like, not amazing, but it was all right. There were things that happened. Definitely things we can talk about.
Yeah, maybe like the rest of the season, overall, all right, with some really good moments. But like I said at the very start, a few moments of downtime like we tend to get in F1 races. But yeah, I enjoyed that one. So plenty to talk about, plenty to sink our teeth into. Should say as well, as is the case with reactions, there are some drivers in with the stewards. We'll come to those as we need to. But for a change, I thought we'd start with Max Verstappen and Red Bull. I know.
Ooh.
Ooh, what a treat. Max Verstappen, we will run through the top three, then we'll do the points finishers, including RB, because I think that ties in nicely with Aston Martin, then we'll do the rest, and then we'll do Q&A and all of that good stuff. But we'll start with Red Bull and Max Verstappen. It's another win, Stuart. Won the sprint yesterday. Ridiculously comfortable when you consider how far he started down the grid for him. What, P4, I think it was, wasn't it, on Saturday. Came through, won comfortably, never looked in doubt, and never looked in doubt again today. I made some notes because, you know, why not? 1.6 seconds clear at the end of lap 1, end of lap 2, 2.6, end of lap 3, 3.1, end of lap 4, 4.1. So he was gone, basically started well, pulled off the line nicely, kept the lead and disappeared, which is, again, just on brand. Pitted end of lap 13 for the Haas, rejoined ahead of Sainz in P4, just 10 seconds off the lead despite pitting. Took the lead from Norris at the hairpin on lap 19, pitted another full safety car. I think basically had to because they had to cover off the fresher tyres from those behind, or potential threats on the fresher tyres from those behind. Restart on lap 27 was 1.3 seconds clear by the end of the first sector. Second restart, just the 1.1 seconds clear by the end of the first sector. So that's my notes on Max Verstappen. I think he had a bit of a moment with debris late on, but pretty much, Stuart, apart from having to do the unthinkable and having to fight back to the lead through the pit stops. I'm trying. Pretty comfortable result.
Yeah, there was a moment for me back on Saturday. Well, obviously he started in the sprint. He started a little bit further down because of the wet weather in SQ3 threw him off a bit, which is actually a bit surprising because he is a bit of a wet weather maestro. But that first half of the sprint, he seemed a little bit off. Like he wasn't quite comfortable with what was going on. It maybe seemed like he had the wrong setup, or there were some little power issues with the car. And I thought, oh, maybe there's something at play this weekend. And then he sort of figured out how to make that car work. And by the end of it, finished, I think, over 10 seconds ahead in what was just a sprint race. And then I thought, okay, well, this weekend's a write-off, isn't it? Yeah, I think the word imperious is used a lot for Max Verstappen, and we saw it again today. I don't think it was ever really in doubt. Nice to see that Red Bull as a team could still be sort of penetrated by other cars and not necessarily going to finish 1-2 all the time. Perez is beatable, but yeah, it's just so easy for him this year, isn't it? He just doesn't have to worry about anything, does he? What else can you say about him? He didn't get fastest lap though, did he? Because of old Alonso's last stint.
Is that what non-Verstappen fans are calling a win? Well, he didn't get them all. He didn't get everything. Alonso got fastest lap. So there is that. And the sprint's interesting because I was the same. I thought maybe this whole one practice session, not been at the track for 5 years, straight into sprint qualifying. Obviously, the rain gave us that exciting finish there, but I thought, well, maybe this is going to have an impact. And then obviously he had his battery issues in the sprint, but he just worked on that, solved the issues. I think I read somewhere he was pushing in the sprint and effectively getting more information for what you can do in the race on the tyres, which I think is sensible. And that's probably set him up beautifully for today. And he was only 14 seconds up the road, but that includes 2 safety car periods. So, I mean, it could have been in fact, I think it was 20 odd seconds at one point. So, I mean, he never looked in doubt. And frankly, I'm not going to feed people a load of BS because that's not what I do. Probably the championship as well. I mean, I'm not saying he's won the championship today, but I think looking at this, I can't see Perez threatening for it. I certainly don't see Ferrari and McLaren being consistent enough to threaten for it. So I think no great surprise to anybody in chat or anybody listening to this later. Verstappen on for a title number 4. So he's just so good at the moment, and the car is brilliant. He's brilliant, and he made the difference today for Red Bull, and I think that's the key. You mentioned Sergio Perez there. Started second on the grid, ended up P3. I'll just read through my notes again. Lost his place at the start to Alonso, who, by the way, we'll get to him in a second. Beautiful move around the outside at the start. Really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. Perez got past him on lap 5 for P2 at turn 6. Nice move there, and a couple of moves there actually Perez did. Completed a Red Bull double stack on lap 13 and put the hards on. Not quite as impressive as Mercedes 5 years ago. That was a little bit more nip and tuck, but still a good move from Red Bull to go with the double stack. Pitted under the full safety car and effectively gave up net track position to Norris and Leclerc for the sake of new tyres. Again, makes sense. Even if you're in that Red Bull, if you've got Norris and Leclerc on fresher tyres, you need to put fresher tyres on as well. So that was the smart thing to do. Apparently, according to commentary in Karun, he had some understeer at slow speed corners. I've not seen him say that after the race, so I'll keep an eye out for that one. Might partially explain his initial lack of progress after the safety car restart. And again, nice late braking move on Leclerc on lap 39 for P3. But Perez today, not an awful result. It's P3. He's on the podium. It's where Red Bull need him to be. But I think he'll see that he'll be disappointed not to be second, because that car clearly had the pace today to be 1-2. And, the safety car caught them out, but you'd still fancy, even with Norris on good form, you'd still fancy, or I did anyway, fancy Perez to finish P2 despite being caught out by the safety car like he was. I still thought the speed was in that car to do that, but I'm not sure if there's anything, Stuart, that I've missed on damage or anything, but maybe grained his tyres up too much. I don't know. I'm trying to make excuses for him as usual, but I expected P2 despite the fact Norris was ahead of him.
Yeah, I think if everything gone to plan, it would have been an easy P2 for him. I think I'm not too surprised that once it shook out with him behind Norris, that he sort of ended up being stuck in P3. I think that's the sort of pace we expect from him. But I haven't heard anything out of the ordinary about how his race is going, and I think this is the kind of, despite not maximizing the weekend as a team, I think this is just what Red Bull want from him. We've said it so many times before. Like, Red Bull don't want a threat to Verstappen. They want somebody who just brings in solid points constantly, just to make sure the team's championship is in grasp. And he's doing that. And actually, he's having a much more solid season all round. Really, I mean, P3 is perfectly fine for what they need from Perez. And as with Max Verstappen, I do wonder if Perez, how excited Perez is about his racing. He sort of just settles into wherever he kind of ends up, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's pre safety car 1-2 on the cars, wasn't it? Definitely, and I don't think that's really under threat. But again, I just expected the pace to be there to chase down Norris. Yeah, he got Leclerc, didn't he? But it's quite a tricky one anyway in China, because you've got that long straight, and with the cars the way they are at the moment, DRS trains here, as we saw in the sprint and as we saw at times today, it just makes it so difficult to overtake even in a car at that speed. Like you said, Verstappen, it took him, he had his issues in the sprint, but he didn't exactly cruise straight to the front immediately, did he? So he had to fight for that for one reason or another. But the DRS trains don't help, and we know, for example, it took Perez a couple of laps to get past Fernando Alonso, but we know the Aston Martin was rapid in a straight line, so that's got to be taken into account. But ultimately, get off the line better and not let Alonso down your outside and your P2 and it's even more comfortable. But I think the safety car didn't help him today, but I still think the pace was there for a second place. But again, third place, that's, I think you bang on, Stuart. It's exactly what Red Bull wants. I mean, they don't want him threatening Verstappen, so maybe they want him closer to him, but not threatening him. So I think that's a fair result. I'm really intrigued by what's going to happen with Perez. It sounded as though fairly recently he was absolutely nailed on to keep that seat, and then in the last week it seems like there's a lot of talk about Carlos Sainz, and I don't know if you caught Ted Kravitz yesterday going off on one a little bit about Christian Horner in his notebook. I get the impression Ted's not a massive fan of Christian Horner sometimes. I know there are probably reasons behind it, but I wonder if things have been said behind the scenes as well. But talk of Carlos Sainz maybe going to Red Bull, and then there's other talk of Carlos Sainz going to Mercedes for a year and then on to Audi, and then it's just like, oh, for goodness sake. I'd feel for Perez if he lost his seat. Let's say Red Bull announced in 3 weeks' time they're taking Sainz next year. I know they won't, but if they did, I'd feel for Perez, because I think what they need from a second driver is what Perez is giving them this year. Yes, last year at times was not good enough, but this year, second, and third in the races that Verstappen's also finished. Apart from third today and maybe a podium in Australia, he's not that far off where he should be. So I think it'd be really harsh to get rid of him. But, Red Bull drivers, they're known for being a little bit harsh at times.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who was saying it during the coverage of the weekend. I think the thought is that Christian Horner's trying to just keep the next contract as low paid as he can get away with and still keep Perez around. So just dropping things like, well, we could take Sainz, we could take this person just to make Perez feel a little bit threatened and not ask for too much money. I think that's the idea of what's going on at the moment. And you're absolutely right. I think Perez is just the kind of person they need. But I think the kind of person that I need as a viewer is someone who might be a bit more of a threat to Verstappen and make things a little bit more Hamilton-Rosberg-y, perhaps, if they can get someone like that.
Yeah, for purely selfish reasons, get out, Checo.
For me,
or pick it up. You never know what's going to happen. Miami next. That was where it all kind of, I think, fell apart from last year. So that's going to be interesting. See how it bounces back there. We'll talk about the driver market, I'm sure, when we get to Q&A a little bit more. But that's kind of it on Red Bull. I'll have a quick look at chat. Stefan says Perez would have no choice but to retire if Red Bull drop him. Thank you very much, Stefan. Good to see you, mate. Hope you're okay. Chatting to you earlier, so I'll chat to you, I'm sure, again later tonight. Purple Zebra says me grasping at straws. We won't really know until after Spain. Fair enough. Very glad they let them change the setups after the sprint, says Vesk. Absolutely agree with that. I think the new format worked well. We'll talk about that later as well. And David Fish says Verstappen now has 4 wins this season and 4 is the number of tyres on an F1 car. That's right. It's tyre talk time. Thank you very much, Dave. There's always one. Lando Norris then, P2 today. Great result for Lando. Really good drive. I have got to just, before I get to my notes, throw this straight to you, Stuart, as a bit of an on-the-spot question.
Okay.
Do you think we, as fans and then pundits and journalists, need to maybe just steady on with the narrative now that McLaren aren't good at tracks with slow speed corners? Because we've had a couple of races this year with tracks that have slow speed corners, and they've had some very good results, including a second place today. I thought on Thursday when I did my preview, they would struggle today and would be closer to Aston Martin and Mercedes than they would be to Ferrari and Red Bull, and Norris is P2. So clearly that car, it may still be weaker in slower and medium speed corners than it is in high speed corners, but it's clearly made a big step from last year. It's clearly not a bad car.
Yeah, no, it's a great car, isn't it? And they did really well this weekend. I know Oscar had some issues, but Lando really made it work. And really, the slow speed talk and complaining we heard this weekend came from Mercedes. So maybe we do need to reassess where this McLaren is. And again, as like Purple Zebra kind of alluded to, we'll hopefully get a big bunch of upgrades in Spain across these cars, and we'll have to reevaluate everything all over again and see where they all sit. But yeah, I'm very impressed with McLaren, and let's see what they can do as we move forward. Again, they're in a much better place than they were last year, and they didn't do half bad by the end of it in 2023.
Yeah, I think that fight between McLaren and Ferrari is going to be a bit more interesting than I thought it would be after the first few races. I thought Ferrari were pretty comfortably second, but it looks like it might be a bit closer. So looking forward to Miami. Norris already saying that he doesn't think that's a track that will suit their car, but I'm sort of like, yeah, all right, Lando, whatever. You said that about China, and here we are. Just on my notes, overtake on the inside of Alonso, lap 7 for P3 at turn 14. He ran longer in the first stint, aiming for a one-stop. I think Ferrari were trying the same, but I think the safety car put pay to that for a lot of teams. Just the way it goes sometimes. Pitted under the virtual safety car, missed a pit entry when it first came out, but still managed to get the time-saving pit stop, as I've named it. Consistently matching and beating Perez's pace in terms of lap times as well, which was good to see. So I think overall, today, a bit disappointed that he couldn't do more in the sprint, given that he started on, well, not pole, but P1 in the sprint, after a great lap in the wet qualifying. The controversy around that, I'm sure somebody will mention that, but why not? Still a really strong drive all weekend, and I think today, I can't really, I don't think he put a foot wrong, unless you're going to tell me now, Stuart, that he's done something I've forgotten.
No, he had a great drive, really made that strategy work, and McLaren didn't sort of panic at any point, because there's a couple of safety car moments there where they some people shifted onto maybe less ideal strategies. Yeah, I think it all came together with it, and I'm glad what happened to him in the sprint happened to him in the sprint and not in the race. I think he would have been extremely disappointed if he'd been bolted down the order in the first corner. Yeah, I'm really impressed, and as I think the whole narrative around Lando is, when are you going to get your win? When is this going to happen for you? Because it I wouldn't say it's panic, but there is an element of a nervousness around, you're sort of in this window now where if it's going to happen, it has to happen now. And unfortunately, the sort of Red Bull dominance is kind of keeping away from things like wins. But I think if there's a sniff of an opportunity this year and we get performances like today, I think he'll be absolutely ready to take it. Imagine if Max, we kind of want him to win on merit. We kind of want anyone to get their first win on merit. But if Max Verstappen had got a puncher on Zhou's debris, he would have been right there ready to take it, because he'd have maximised his day today.
Yeah, I think Norris is kind of, for race wins, what Hulkenberg is for podiums at the moment. I feel like Nico Hulkenberg, for years, commentary like Nico Hulkenberg, who still hasn't got a podium in F1. I feel like Lando Norris is just, until he gets his win, it's going to be Lando Norris, who still doesn't have a win in F1. I saw somebody really creatively on Twitter, and I say really creatively as sarcastically as I possibly can, calling him Lando No Wins. Social media is so funny, so random, guys. But there's also with me this morning, Christ. But it's like, we're in a period of Red Bull dominance. Yes, the McLaren's a good car, like you say, Stuart. Now's the time to be doing it if he's going to do it, but you need a problem for Verstappen. But then even like in Australia, when we had a problem for Verstappen, it was Ferrari that picked up the pieces and not Lando Norris and McLaren. So it's not always, there's a lot of people to beat out there. And when you've got a Red Bull so dominant like Verstappen, it's going to be tough. But if he said to, I think it was Nico Rosberg after the race on Sky, that finishing second to Max Verstappen feels like a win. So it's not a win in the record books, I'm afraid, Lando, but I totally get what he means. If you've got Verstappen out there dominating and you finish P2, you are the best driver of everybody else on the day. So it's almost like a win, but it's not a win. So unfortunately, but yeah, I feel like that's where it is. But do you want a quick word, Stuart, before we roll on to Piastri, just on what happened in sprint qualifying that caused all the Twitter controversy? It's all a big FIA anti-Hamilton scam, of course, as we know. I've looked through the decision on that lap time deletion and reinstated, and it's clear as day why the decision's been made. I don't think it's all that controversial. In fact, if anybody's wondering, I've saved them. I haven't put them in stream, but I can read them to you. It's not a problem, or I thought I could, but I appear to have hidden them somewhere, and I don't know where they are. It's about right for me. Oh, there we go. So the key here is all about the race director's notes, event notes. Yeah. So track limits everyone keeps talking about how in Austria it's deletion of the next lap, but so I went back and got them. So the track limits race director's notes for Austria 2023 says, in accordance with the provisions of Article 33.3, the white lines define the track edges. During qualifying, sprint, shootout, sprint and the race, each time a driver fails to negotiate with the track limits, this will result in the lap time being invalidated by the stewards. Additionally, Each time a driver fails to negotiate with the exit of turn 10 will result in that lap time and the immediately following lap time being invalidated by the stewards. However, the event notes for China include all of the, in accordance to Article 33, don't make the final corner, your lap time's invalidated part, but it does not include the part about the final corner, missing the final corner resulting in the next lap being deleted. So basically, whilst the regulations may say that's a track limits issue, the event notes quite clearly say that they're not deleting lap times for the next lap if you miss the final corner. And rightly so, by the way, because there's gravel there now. I know that they want to keep an eye on all four wheels inside the white lines, but I think when you've got gravel on the outside of a corner, you don't really need to be paying too much attention. I mean, maybe that's just me. I don't know, but I think in that situation, you've got gravel there. You're not getting much of an advantage. You didn't get any advantage anyway out there. And the event notes were quite clear that they're not monitoring that anyway. So... or they are monitoring it, but not deleting the next lap. So I don't really think that was the controversy people thought it was. And just as a little aside, I suppose, to people, that information is ready available at FIA.com, and anybody could do that rather than just jumping on Twitter and having a screaming and shouting fit at the FIA. It's all there, public, for everybody.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think I think you basically said it all. I think. I mean, there are a couple of things. I mean, one of them, I think, if it happens to people with large fan bases like Hamilton, where it looks like they've been denied something, obviously it's going to provoke you're going to hear a larger reaction. And I think it was one of those. There were a couple of things happened this weekend. That the sort of the science spin in qualifying as well. It was where it was more about sort of little nuances of the rules. It got just a slightly more maybe complicated or more lawyery. Than we're used to, because I think most of the time when you're watching sport, you just have these kind of like set ideas about what the rules are, like in a simple frame, and you think, okay, yeah, if you run right at the last corner, it validates the previous lap and the next lap. But there was a little bit more to it than that, and I think once people learn that, I like to hope they are, they were like, okay, I'm better informed now. I'm going to drop this and be normal. I'm pretty sure that's what happened to everybody. But yeah, I think it was the right thing to do, and I think having the gravel on the edge of that last corner meant that obviously the race director thought there was no need to add anything to the notes to clarify how that corner was scrutinized. I think it gets just a little tricky around kind of maybe communicating that. I'm like, maybe there was no need to communicate it ahead of time, but then everybody was rushing to kind of figure out what was going on when it happened. Because I think having someone on, I'm just going to call it pole for the sake of it, but having someone on pole, having them lose the pole, and then getting put back on pole, denying someone else a pole in the matter of a few minutes, it just looks a bit like what is happening, and you're sort of celebrating one driver 1 minute, and then that gets taken away another, and you start to think there's shenanigans going on, which there are sometimes shenanigans going on. So I could see why sometimes people get a little bit twitchy around FIA things going on. But actually, if you looked a bit deeper, there were lots of other drivers that ran wide, had their previous lap time deleted, but not the next one, including people like Verstappen. And it was consistent with what was happening with that corner.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The only thing I'd add is you definitely have more faith in the Twitterati than I do in learning lessons. But anyway, thank you very much to Stefan for your super chat, mate. Appreciate that. Don't forget you can drop your own super chat, and if you fancy it, we'll always read super chats, but we'll always come to you for Q&A later anyway. But not Stefan, sorry, Stein. Thank you. Is glad to catch the stream again. Hope all is well. I think the only question marks for the rest of the season in terms of winner are Monaco and Singapore. Thank you very much, mate. Sorry about that. It was the purple S and then the members helmet and and the STE, and I didn't really proper. But thank you very much, Stein, for your super chat and your continued support. Really appreciate that. Monaco and Singapore often outliers, aren't they? So that could be interesting. Looking forward to Monaco as always, qualifying specifically. Oscar Piastri, Aussie P. For God's sake. Really off Norris's pace before the pit stop on lap 16, so I want to put that in there straight away. Pitted under the full safety car lap later, but he has significant damage, which explained his pace after the Ricciardo incident on the safety car. So he was over a second of his teammates' pace consistently. So that explains his pace in the second half of the race today. If you want to call it second half of the race, after that safety car incident with Ricciardo, where Ricciardo hit by Stroll, then hits the back of Piastri and damages Piastri's diffuser. But before that, he was also off Norris's pace as well. So it's not like that cost him the chance of a P4 today or anything like that. But it was P8 for Piastri. It's points on the board. I've not got much in my notes really for Oscar. I little bit disappointed not to see him higher, but of course, if then you've got the diffuser damage in the second part of the race, you're going to struggle anyway. So maybe obviously we're going to cut him some slack there, or we'll cut him some slack there. But what did you make of his race today, Stuart? It's points, isn't it, in a car that was what did they say? Was it significantly damaged?
Yeah, and I think he was perhaps lucky that Lewis Hamilton also was having a real struggle fest out there, and that he didn't lose another position at the end, because it just seemed that Hamilton wasn't able to get close enough to pass him, and he'd lose another point. But he wasn't having an amazing race before all the safety car stuff kicked off. Like he was clearly at a different level of pace than Norris was in the other car, and I think he was struggling to keep those tyres working for as long as Norris was. So something to continue working on. This track is a little bit unique, so maybe it sort of highlighted one of his weaknesses. But yeah, I think he was sort of. I think he had a solid weekend, but I think he will come away thinking there's things he needs to improve, because he's seen what Norris has done in that car, and he knows at the moment Norris is his number one target, because he really needs to establish himself as at least as good as Norris, which I think he, based on previous performance, I think he can get to that level with more consistency, with a little bit more knowledge and just developing himself.
I find it interesting that Andrea Stella called him a rookie today. Because, I mean, you I suppose a rookie at this circuit, because he's one of those that won't have raced here in Formula One back in 2019, but there are a few drivers that haven't. But I just found that interesting. So obviously the team still view it, which is, I guess he's not officially a rookie. Of course, last year was his rookie season, did a great job. But I think maybe the team acknowledging there that he's still young, only second season, needs time rather than specifically a rookie. So just something I wanted to point out, and it's not important. It's not really important at all, but I just thought I'd mention it while we're talking about him. Warren in chat says, held up Leclerc and Sainz well to help Lando out, which is a good point. I think, he's a good team player, is Oscar Piastri, actually, to be fair to him. I'll give him that. And John Jones says, going to be a pain with the car insurance, getting hit by a car that got hit from behind themselves. Definitely. Jasper Carrots in insurance claims. Check it out on YouTube. Ferrari. Ferrari. I don't know what to make of them today, Stuart. I don't think horrific result, 4th and 5th place. It's good points on the board. They're behind both Red Bulls. Lando Norris was pretty impressive today, so maybe 4th and 5th was the maximum for them. But Leclerc, close with teammate at the start and lost places, but that's the second time they've nearly come to blows this weekend. Quickly made his way back to P7, though, to be fair. Made a lovely move around the outside of turn 1 on George Russell on lap 9 for P6. I love an overtake around the outside of turn 1 at China. Just the way the corner works, and then sort of turns, it gets tighter into turn 2, and then you've got turn 3 immediately is a bit kind of Sapangi in that bit there, and I love that sequence of corners, so I always enjoy that. Overtake on Piastri lap 11 at the hairpin. Ran longer in the first stint. I think he, like Norris and co, were trying to target a one-stopper, but the safety car put pay to that. Pitted on the virtual safety car, which saved him around 9 seconds, a 15-second stop apparently. So, yeah, not convinced by Plan D. Neither was Carlos Sainz over the radio, and did say as well, tyres are not great. He did 2-stop Leclerc, didn't he? No, Leclerc did 1-stop, and so did Sainz. They did make the 1-stop.
They both did 1-stop.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But maybe that, I guess what the point I was making was maybe the 1-stop compromising their pace a little bit in the latter stages. In the chat, well, no, I'm just looking at the timing screen now. Maybe throughout the second part of the race, perhaps, but at the end, both of them were quicker than Perez in P3. So still the pace in the Ferraris, but yeah, safety car's probably not helping them, is I guess my point there. Carlos Sainz, again, close with his teammate at the start. That put him wide at turn 1 and into turn 2, and he lost some places there. Quickly made his way back to P6. Did try and move on Lance Stroll for P8. There'll be a picture of that in a bit. Lap 21 at turn 6, but locked up and went wide. Stroll kept the place. He didn't pit under he didn't pit on the safety car either, and he again, like Leclerc, was not convinced by Plan D. I was impressed they were only on Plan D, actually. I think that's pretty good for Ferrari. So, yeah, what did you make of their race, Stuart? I came here thinking they would be threatening pole because of what they can do over one lap, and that they would be the biggest threat to Red Bull. And maybe if anyone was going to pick off Sergio Perez, it would be Leclerc or Sainz, and maybe even a double Ferrari podium. But it felt like we were, 4.4 seconds off isn't a huge gap, I know, but it felt like they were a long way off top three today.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising for them today, actually, and I'm starting to wonder if they're doing that classic Ferrari thing where they come out the start of the season all guns blazing, looking like they're going to be, the main challengers, the second best, and then just starting to fade away as the other teams find their feet and unlock the potential of their cars, and now we're sort of seeing them kind of float around. I mean, this may be a bogey track. They may have just had a bad time of it. I think they made that one stop work well. Leclerc could have made it work incredibly well if that first virtual safety car only lasted for about half a lap and he managed to dive into the pits when Norris didn't. I think that could have changed the complexion of the race quite a bit if that's the way that would have gone. But in the end, the first safety car was Bottas, wasn't it? His car got sort of stuck in gear and they couldn't move it for ages. But if they had managed to roll it off, I think they would have pulled off a blinder there. But yeah, I think good and steady pace. Another race where they sort of probably finished as high as they could. Probably a little bit gutted to see Norris a couple of places ahead of them. I'd say the safety car period maybe helped them a little bit because it helped them kind of nurse their tires for a little bit. But actually, most people swapped over to the last stint hard in that time. So they were everyone was in the same boat a bit. So yeah, I think they did well what they did. Like last week, interesting they can sort of make one stops work a little bit better than cars around them again. But you look at Red Bull, they don't need to be pulling weird strategies like that. They don't need to be trying things out. They just run as plan A race as possible and just see what everyone else does. Yeah, I think they'll have some questions, and I think they're going to need to get the development moving on this car because I think they're going to start to be nervous about the teams around them.
Yeah, I still think it's a fair point on being able to nurse the tyres under the safety car a little bit because it just keeps things under control a little bit, doesn't it? So I think that probably did help a bit. But again, their pace at the end was all right. I mean, they were quicker than Perez ahead of them. So obviously the one-stop worked for them. And is that the second race in a row? Because Leclerc did the one-stop in Japan, didn't he? And did a cracking job there. Yeah. So clearly the Ferrari kind of on its tyres than it has been in the past, which we kind of knew anyway. And good point on the outline thing, because I think I heard it was either in commentary or I read somewhere. I can't remember. It's getting up early. I enjoy these early races, but by the middle of the afternoon, I'm not on this planet anymore, which isn't always a bad thing. But I think somebody was saying that China, not just because we haven't been here for 5 years, but generally because of the layout of the track, is a bit of an outlier. So it's not going to give you the full picture of the pecking order. So that's something maybe to bear in mind for Miami, and then maybe more, let's say, conventional tracks we have been to recently, tracks that will give us more of an idea. Like Barcelona, like Purple Zebra said, that's a great track that will give us a good idea of the pecking order. But I mean, we know who's P1. Clearly, but yeah. you know what I mean. It's a bit of an outlier, so that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. But yeah, just a bit weird from Ferrari today. I could have sworn Leclerc had been through the pits twice. Obviously, I was fantasizing what it would be like if Ferrari had pitted twice. I don't know why, but I still think that's fourth and fifth. That's a decent result, all things considered, for them. But obviously, coming into the weekend, I expected more. Obviously, as a Ferrari fan, I'm going to be hard on them anyway because I want them to do more. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in Miami in a couple of weeks' time. It's good, but yeah, another sprint as well. Good stuff.
Yeah,
exciting. Lots of people very, very happy about that, I'm sure. Just what you're saying in chat before we move on to some more teams. Alfie Alpha wants to know: is there an A in the Ferrari alphabet? Probably not.
If there is, I've not heard it.
Dell says some spice between the Ferrari drivers this weekend. Yeah, that's a good point. I did briefly kind of mention that, but there were a few close moments. The hairpin in the sprint, and then there was the start today. Fred Vasseurs pulled them aside and have a chat with them, and the drivers are very much like, that's just racing. We're getting on fine. But are things just getting a little bit tetchy now? Carlos Sainz fighting for a seat in F1. Charles Leclerc fighting to show Ferrari that they've backed the right horse. I guess, for next season to partner Lewis Hamilton. I think it's getting a little bit tetchy. It's good to see. I like it when teammates get close. Obviously, don't want them colliding, but I want to see teammates fighting. It gets a bit boring watching cars jump out of the way of faster cars all the time, or teammates letting other teammates through. I want to see a bit of spice there, as Dale put it. But this is. I think you said it in testing, Stuart. This is a lineup that is going to be very worth keeping an eye on as the season progresses, because it could get very tasty, and it's already starting to show signs of that. So what did you make of it? Nico Rosberg seems to think Sainz should get a penalty for that in the sprint, by the way.
Nah. Nico Rosberg says a lot of things I don't necessarily agree with. I'm glad he's got opinions about things. He has an interesting perspective on things. I think what we're seeing in particular, Sainz has had a really good start to the year. He knows he's out of a seat. And he knows there's a lot of good chat about him right now about how good he started the season and how he's comparing himself to Leclerc. And I think he's just running with that, to be honest. I think he's just wants to keep that level high, not capitulate to Leclerc, and just prove that he's as good as the driver they've chosen to keep on. So anyone who's looking to put him in their car will not only try to be first in line to grab him, but also probably give him a lot of money and a nice long contract if possible. So I think he's basically just going all out for himself at the moment, and obviously Leclerc's doing the same, and I think that's good. I think as long as they don't get too messy and cause themselves a mischief and lose the team points, I think that's fine. I think they're just going to be careful about how this goes from here. But I'm enjoying seeing Sainz know his worth, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, of course, Nico Rosberg will also tell you that after the incident in Austria in 2016, he absolutely deserved the penalty for that. I'm sure at no point did he sit there in a press conference or anything saying that he didn't think that was a penalty. I'm sure he was absolutely accepting of that. It's just F1 drivers being F1 drivers, isn't it? That's we're going to get onto Lance Stroll and Lance Stroll today. Unbelievable. Well, I mean, come on, Lance. Anyway, let's roll on. Any ball points in chat super quickly? Warren says that he almost never penalised teammates, and I kind of think unless it's a really stupid move, I don't see the point in penalising teammates for getting close. The team can sort that out, but obviously there needs to be penalties if things get too stupid. And we'll come back to that, Vesk. Remind me at Q&A on the Ferrari point on Lewis Hamilton, and we'll leave it there for those teams. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to do the points finishers, which will be Mercedes and Aston Martin and Haas, but I'm also going to slot RB into the conversation. We'll talk about Aston Martin, do that all as one, and then I'll do the rest, which will be Alpine, Williams, Sauber super quickly after that. I'll check for the investigations for each team as we get there, and then of course we'll do Q&A as well a little bit later if we have time. I'm sure we'll be able to squeeze that in. So let's move on to... It's Mercedes. It is Mercedes, yes. George Russell, P6 today. Lewis Hamilton, P9. Just on George Russell, I'm going to read you my comprehensive notes. Pitted under full safety car. Sorry, George. It's not that I wasn't paying attention. I was watching the race, but I feel like he had one of those, and we've said this a few times actually about George Russell, I feel this season, or recently at least. One of those races where he probably got the maximum he could with 6th place, and sort of, I don't like using the word anonymous race because that sounds harsh, but I don't recall seeing masses of him, and I don't think he really, he had to battle early on and around pit stops and things, but nothing massively controversial, nothing particularly exciting unless I've missed something, but a really solid drive and a really good 6th place finish, and he seems to be... I know, Toto Wolff was saying that Lewis Hamilton's been experimenting with things this weekend, but of the two drivers at the moment, my read is that Russell... I'm sure this will thrill Hamilton fans, seems to have a better grip of that car at the moment, whether it suits him more or that's just the way it's going, or if Hamilton is experimenting every weekend. I don't know what Toto Wolff has said on that fully, but I think, just like I say, really solid, decent race from Russell, and I don't think P6 is a bad result, and I believe he said afterwards that's about the maximum they could have got today, so can't really fault him there at all. Lewis Hamilton... started P18, finished P9. I actually think that's a really decent drive as well to come through the field like that. Not happy with the soft tyre during the first stint. Made a lovely move as well around the outside of Tsunoda on lap 13 to take what was only P15 at that point. Did see on lap 16, over the radio. Can't even catch him, referring to Ocon. This car is so slow, so not happy there at all. Pitted on the virtual safety car, did complain of balance issues. I'll read what he said on radio. Said, car is sliding around everywhere, feels like something's broken, probably just balance, but it's really bad. So not happy with the car, not happy with that first stint, struggling to catch Ocon at one point, but still managed to come through to pick up a couple of points from 18th on the grid. That's still a decent result, and I think a good drive there, but clearly things aren't right on that side of the garage for one reason or another, and Russell is probably in fact, I'm just going to double check before I say it, because I need to do this from now on. I need to check things before I say what I'm going to say. George Russell, 5th, 6th, obviously DNF in Australia, 7th and 6th this season. He seems to be getting the most out of that car and maximising results given where that car is, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, I found it very funny the way you introduced George Russell then, because I had the very explicit thought during this race that I haven't thought about George Russell at all. He's just been there driving, sort of slotted into the pace that he's in and not really bothered about anyone else. I think just kind of had a very solid day. It helped that he started in the position he should have started, where Hamilton had issues. In terms of Hamilton, I think getting up to P9, yes. That is good. But he did have a real struggle fest, and I often wonder if you're his race engineer or his team listening to his radio messages, how you learn to interpret what he's saying, because even in a dominant car, whenever anything was happening, it was always the worst. He was always so hyperbolic about it. My tires have gone. This feels bad. Like the car's not steering. I'm like it feels like the car's collapsing around him. And I wonder how you learn to interpret what he's saying to try and help him or work out what's going on in the car. And I'm sure when he's in the debriefs, he's a lot more specific in his language. But clearly he made it work eventually, but he was on sort of weird strategies and at the time I thought most of the race I thought maybe he wouldn't even get into the points because he was in trains of cars he shouldn't be in trains of cars with and not really making much progress, and it just seemed like maybe there is something wrong with the car, maybe there's a big hole in the side of it from something we haven't seen. So he's not going to be happy with P9, I don't think, even though he started P18. I don't know what's going to make him happy at the moment. I think just the thought of Ferrari currently, because he's clearly just having a little bit of a miserable time with Mercedes, which is a really strange thing to say after so many good years. And I think, as people have been saying over the weekend, this is Mercedes' worst start to the year since they took over Brawn and started running this team, which is wild to me to think about, especially as we're on year 3 of the We Can Fix It program. Not sure where we go from here. They seem to be in a constant state of we're still learning about this car, and one day we will learn how this car works and everything will be great. But it's been 3 years now, and I'm wondering when they're going to learn how this car works.
Well, I'm sort of expecting Toto Wolff to be sort of Abu Dhabi next year, 2025, the car works and he goes, oh, Eureka! Oh, brilliant! And then new rules next year, Toto. Oh, bollocks.
Yeah.
But I mean, Purple Zebra just said it in chat, Hamilton has been experimenting with things for the last 3 years. It's just what they really clearly need is the new regulations, and they need a reset. But I don't see a team like that writing next year off or anything. I think teams will to an extent next year. I think we've said this before because they're going to be focusing on 26, and these cars that we've got this year will carry over into next year. But I don't think they'll completely write it off. Their focus will still be on trying to do the best they can. But just looking at chats, I saw a point I wanted to. I was going to make the same point, but I just want to read it as well. Vest says that Verstappen complains about his car a lot when he's in the lead. Maybe that's just the champion's mindset, which is a very good point. I think that's. I don't really know what it was like under, say, Schumacher and co. We didn't get the team radio like we do now, so it could have been the same then. I'm not sure. And I saw Delta says he doesn't think that Lewis cares about coding messages anymore. And Warren said Russell had a good start. Other than that, yes, he was there. But really frustrating weekend for for Hamilton, but probably because he got that second place on the grid in the sprint. He was leading the sprint for the first 9 laps. Maybe felt like that because he expects to go backwards in the dry, but in the sprint on Saturday, he was still P2 and pretty comfortably P2. So
yeah,
probably felt like he could have done more, but then in qualifying it didn't work. Obviously trying things out with setup and it just all fell apart. And 18th on the grid is absolutely, from second on the grid, I know it was wet, but second on the grid and second in the sprint to 18th in proper qualifying is, I can imagine, quite the kick in the gut on a Saturday night to be sat there going, I was second this morning and I'm now 18th. That's got to hurt. So frustration, but it's going to be interesting to see what Mercedes do here for the rest of this season with Hamilton, because obviously he's leaving, so their focus will need to be to a point on Russell, won't it? So it may get worse before it gets better. It may turn around in Miami. This could be an outlier, but Mercedes, I think, just are at the moment on a good weekend the 4th best team, on a bad weekend a 5th best team. It's just kind of where I think they are at the moment. So, and I know it's been a few years now, but I've been doing this channel since 2017, so it still feels weird, even now, 2024, saying that about Mercedes, given what they achieved for 8 straight years. It still feels weird, and people say we shouldn't do, Sean. Get over it. It's we're in 2024, but I think it would have been the same for people after Ferrari domination. It's 2005 was such a bad year. It was obviously only 1 year after, but it's still going to feel weird. And then looking at now, I mean, it still feels weird as a Ferrari fan seeing us, seeing us struggle a little bit too much. But yeah, I'm rambling on. But yeah, it's interesting. Thank you very much to Greg for your super chat. Says here's a few dollars towards Lance Stroll's eye checkup and inevitable glasses. Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate your support, mate. Thank you for your super chat. Very kind of you. Anything else on Mercedes, Stuart, or chat that we need to shout out before we move on to Aston Martin and probably the big talking points of the weekend?
No, I think the less said about Mercedes, the better.
Mercedes would agree with that, to be honest.
Yeah, continue it at the drawing board for them.
We'll see what happens next year and beyond. I'm sure they'll be fine. I'm sure they'll turn it around. As they've been saying for 3 years. So Aston Martin then. Fernando Alonso finished in 7th today. Stroll was down in 15th. Weird one for Alonso, because 7th looks really quite pants given where he was, but he did make the extra pit stop, didn't he, onto the softs, and then the safety car kind of shafted him a little bit there because he had to try and get them to the end, and that messed up his strategy, so they had to make the extra stop. So to actually come back to P7, if you look at sort of before all of the safety car nonsense, you see Alonso 7th, you think that's a bad race, but then when you put that all into account, the comeback drive to 7th was really solid late on. He was actually matching Verstappen's pace on the final lap as well, or the final lap, so really good drive from Alonso. P7, nice move around the outside of Perez, like I say at the start, to get P2. Did his best to hang on to that, but again, inevitability, Red Bull coming through, you expected that to happen. Pitted under the full safety car for the soft tyres, yes he did. Late-ish stop for Alonso with 12 laps to go. Dipped a rear wheel on the gravel, by the way, on lap 48 at the final corner, chasing Hamilton for P9, and made what was save of the weekend, if not save of the season so far. That car was basically sideways after it clipped the gravel, and I was fully expecting a Carlos Sainz qualifying incident there, and Alonso into the wall, but he held it brilliantly, and then about 6 corners later past Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's just that good is Fernando Alonso. And yeah, like I say, turn 6 past Hamilton, nice move there as well, which ultimately ended up with him getting past Piastri not long after, and then he took P7. So Fernando Alonso just being Fernando Alonso. Unapologetically Fernando Alonso. Great save, really good weekend, but I think ultimately, Stuart, probably without the safety car and the issues with the soft tyre, or going for the soft tyre, top 5 maybe, do we think?
Yeah, I think so. He was doing really great in the early part of the race. He had good pace. He was up among it. I think obviously he wouldn't have been able to take it to the Red Bulls, and I think at least Norris would have had him. But yeah, he didn't have the right set of tyres available to make the early switch to a hard tyre work. He just didn't have anything left, so they had to essentially make 2 more stops once they decided to come in and take advantage of the safety car window. Which really threw him for a loop. But I mean, you can't say he didn't make the most of a fresh set of mediums, can you?
No.
He came out, I think, 12th, I think, from his last pit stop and whooshed his way right up to 7th. So that's an astonishing bit of driving from Alonso. And I keep asking myself, when is this man going to peak? I've spoken, we saw kind of Vettel, he had his peak period, and then we saw his kind of more lackluster period, and where lackluster is a bit unfair, but his going beyond his peak. And I think Hamilton is post peak now, but Alonso being 42, 43 and signed into a contract till he's 45 and seems no end of being able to keep up either in terms of pace, drivability, mental gymnastics he's pulling while racing. It's quite phenomenal, really. And that save was amazing, and not being flustered by that save enough to throw him off, just leaping straight after him. I think he overtook Hamilton that lap and overtook Piastri later that lap. I think same lap, did 2 overtakes after after nearly creaming it into the wall. Really impressive from him. I've got no end of respect for what Alonso could do.
Yeah, I agree. I want to talk more about Alonso later, though, when we get to sort of waffle and Q&A. But we'll keep spinning on with this. But yeah, I agree. Just a good weekend for Alonso overall. Yeah, I echo everything you say. I've got nothing else to add, really. Warren says, great qualifying weekend from Alonso. Absolutely third on the grid. Very good from him. Should we talk about Lance Stroll? And probably the biggest talking point of the day for a lot of people, I think. So I'll start with my race notes before we get on to the incident itself. Overtake on the inside of Hulkenberg for P9 at lap 6. Squeezed in wide, ran into the back of Ricciardo as Phil was bunching up. In the pits for a long time, a whole minute according to Ted after that one for repairs. 10-second time penalty as well for causing a collision with Ricciardo. A great scrap with Magnussen on lap 34 and 35, which was from turn 12 all the way to turn 1. All that side-by-side jostling, that was great to see. Crofty desperately trying to sell us an exciting action for what was P16. Served his penalty in the pits on lap 35, so obviously made the extra stop, his 4th stop of the day, what with repairs and all of that. But again, the big talking point, that incident with Daniel Ricciardo, it's there's been a lot of debate on Twitter, some saying it's not Lance's fault, what can he do in that situation, others saying he's got plenty of time to react. The steward said that they determined that car 18, so Lance Stroll, ought to have anticipated the pace of the cars in front, particularly Ricciardo, and could have prepared to brake accordingly. Had it done that, it would have avoided the collision. Hence, car 18 was predominantly to blame for the collision that ultimately led to car 3 having to retire from the race. If you're interested in what Ricciardo said, I've not taken it from the press release. You'll love this. So Daniel Ricciardo, speaking to the media post-race, said, and I'm going to quote him in full here, says, excuse the language by the way when it comes, I slowly started to calm down and then I was told what Lance thinks of the incident. Apparently I'm an idiot and it was my fault, so that made my blood boil because it's clear as day and it's also behind a safety car. The only thing you've got to do is watch the car in front. We can't predict what the leaders is going to do. We can't assume that we're going to go into turn 14. The race doesn't start till the control line, so I'm doing my best not to say what I want to say, but fuck that guy and I'm being nice still. So Daniel Ricciardo, again, excuse the language, not happy. I watched Karun Chandok's analysis afterwards. So Sainz had space, and then to get caught out by the speed of Leclerc and Perez backing off, which obviously is triggered by the leader, which is perfectly the leader's prerogative. Alonso had the gap to Sainz, but he locks up and he's also taken by surprise by the pace. But Stroll then leaves it too late and ran into the back of Ricciardo. Now, Ricciardo is absolutely bang on, by the way. So I absolutely agree that, you've got to be being aware of those around you. He also said that Stroll was looking to the right and not looking at the incident ahead. He was looking at the corner rather than at him. Sky said in their analysis that Stroll had space and time to shoot to the right. But my argument, and this is an argument I always make for football, okay, it's all right doing that after the fact and slowing down the footage because you're watching that footage in an extremely slow and frame by frame. So it looks like he's got plenty of time. He's got a week if he needs it to swing to the right, but this is all happening extremely quickly for the drivers. So if he's looking to the apex of the corner, doesn't look at Ricciardo and goes into the back of him, then that's not happened in 30 seconds a minute of them doing this analysis. That's happening much quicker than that. So I think it's unfair to pick it apart like that, but I understand why they have to do it for analysis so they can really point out the things. But ultimately, if he isn't looking at Ricciardo, he's not looking at the traffic ahead and he's too focused on the corner before he even gets there, and he hits the back of Ricciardo, I can see why the penalty's been given. 10 seconds, it's under the safety car, so you're supposed to be more observant anyway because it's a safety car. You've got to keep an eye on the cars ahead. He's taken Ricciardo out of the race and damaged Piastri. So I suppose from that point of view, not that the stewards consider, the consequences. They say that, but you've got to think, well, maybe that's subconsciously or whatever, part of it, 10 seconds. But I think 5 would have been fine. But this all comes down to whether the stewards are implying or applying the regulations not a different way. I think what I'm saying is they've got a different way they're applying them this year. The 10-second penalty seems to be largely the standard now, doesn't it, for these incidents? Because there was a lot of fuss over the winter about it and last season. So do you think, I guess I'm going to close this poll in a minute in the last chat as well, but do you think 10 seconds was harsh? Do you think the penalty's right? Do you think Stroll's been unfairly done to? Do you think it's just a racing incident? I'm back and forth on it because I can kind of see weirdly both sides of the argument. Usually I'm quite quick to say, well, they did that, that's their fault. He's hit the back of another car, that's on him. But there's not a lot of time to react, but there is more time than others have had, and others managed to react accordingly and not hit the back of the cars. So I'm not really sure what conclusion to come to.
I think well, there's a couple of things in that. I think it's interesting. Essentially 10 seconds has become the minimum penalty now. I think they've all but disregarded 5 seconds. It seems like, which could be more of an incentive not to get yourself into trouble. We'll see what drivers think of that as the year goes on. But I think that's basically the standard for this year. We saw a lot of 10-second penalties this race, or at least a handful all at once. And so if that's the minimum they can really give, then that's the minimum they can give. It's an interesting, wasn't it? And I absolutely agree with what you're saying about the difference between watching it in a replay and living it in the moment. And you see that with a lot of things in racing, in sports, in dash cam footage, lots of things. So people would be like, "Oh, you should have just done this," not really taking on mind. Well, one, reaction time, which as human beings has a minimum. There's no getting around that. It takes time for you to process what's happening and then make an action to mitigate that. And also when you're watching replays, you know what's going to happen, and you can start thinking about, oh, you could have done this, could have done that. Whereas actually you sort of got half a second to realize what's happening and make a decision and hope it's the right one. So I think it was quite tricky for Stroll, but also I think what Ricciardo says and what the stewards have said does have a lot of merit. I think until you get to the safety car line, you're in safety car conditions, and you're basically beholden to the car in front. That's what you should be looking at and making sure. I'm aware that it's a competition, and he's looking to the apex the next corner because he's kind of basically getting ready to go because he's expecting everyone to just bolt it at that corner, as Max Verstappen did, and that means he's taken his eye off what's actually happening in front. And as the steward said, everybody else managed to cope with what was happening. Obviously, it's a bit hairy. Alonso had his lockup. People were getting pretty close. Ricciardo got very close and only sort of hit the car in front because Stroll pushed him into him. So I think if the stewards say, well, everyone else managed it, you weren't looking where you were going, and you've got to be prepared for concertinas happening as the safety car restart happens, then I think that's kind of fair enough. And I think maybe 10 seconds, if that's the minimum they've got, that's the minimum that's what they're working with this year. I wouldn't argue very hard against Stroll getting a punishment, to be honest. And it's interesting because in the steward's notes, because you were talking about it should be. We've spoken a lot about this, and it's talked about a lot on Twitter about stewards punishing the action, not the consequence. But in the steward's notes, they do say car 18 was predominantly to blame for the collision that led to car 3 having to retire. So it seems like they also the fact that he crashed into Ricciardo and damaged him hard enough for him to retire, that came into their decision making.
Good point. Yeah,
rightly or wrongly, I think that the question of whether consequences should be part of Stuart's decisions. I think this. I'm not sure entirely where I land on that. I think sometimes if you do actually cause someone to retire, maybe that should be punished more harshly than if you just did something silly but got away with it. I don't know. So yeah, I think it's kind of fair. I think, bearing in mind everything else that was happening and that no one else managed to muck it up the way he did, I think maybe it's kind of fair and maybe serves as a warning for people to pay attention in safety car restarts and not just be looking to get the jump on everyone else. Because we've had other safety car restarts that have been absolutely calamitous because people were sort of just working on their own start and not actually looking at people around them to certain levels of degrees. Yeah, that's what I got to say.
Yeah, I think the more I look at it as I watch it again now, I think the more I look at it, the more I'm less torn, I guess. But there is a part of me, I like to look at both sides, but there is a part of me that thinks, people braking hard ahead, which they're allowed to do. He's got caught out by that. It's unfortunate, but then ultimately he has to be aware of the cars around him. He needs to be keeping an eye on his head. And I get the look into the apex and preparing for a restart, but there's no point him bolting when he sees Verstappen bolt because he can't pass anybody. So he's kind of almost got to wait his turn for that, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but you can't ever take till the start-finish line, so there's no point bolting at the same time as Verstappen. So I don't know why he's looking at the corner, and so I think on balance, the penalty is the right call, because if you have to put anybody at fault there, it is Stroll. I know there'll be people that argue that Alonso's slamming the brakes on, so Sainz, but they're all reacting to what's happening ahead. So if the argument is it's Alonso's fault because he slammed the brakes on, then are you saying Alonso should have ploughed into the back of Sainz? I know nobody's saying that, but I'm just making a point. Somebody at some point is going to have to react to the car ahead braking, and that's exactly what Alonso did and Sainz did, and they both very nearly got caught out. So I think it is a penalty, and again, 10 seems harsh, but as you said, Stuart, if that is the minimum penalty effectively this season, then there is no debate around that. It's 10 seconds at the end of the day. So in that regard, I guess it's fair. It's just these things happen, and yeah, it's the end of Ricciardo's race, damages Piastri's car. I didn't pick up on that in the worded regulation though when I read it back there, Stuart, and when I read the decision. So thank you for pointing that out about them clearly taking something into account. But yeah, I think it is a penalty. Just sort of looking at it again, and I'm just sort of looking at Alonso is locking up, isn't he? So, but no, I think Stroll's not looking ahead. And I've seen some people on social media, and I think Veskin chat has made the point about brake lights on cars. They've thought about it before. I think they've even trialed them, but they're just not something that ever happens, because by the time you see the brake light on an F1 car, it's probably already too late. But Stroll today wasn't even looking at the back of Ricciardo. So even if, and I guess that's kind of the point, isn't it? If he wasn't even looking at the back of Ricciardo, brake lights would have made no difference. It had still been straight in the back of him. So just to take my waffle and summarise it, correct decision for the penalty, but these things do happen, and he's just been caught out. It's not. I guess the point I'm making is it's not deliberate. Stroll hasn't gone, fuck you, Ricciardo. He might do next time, given Ricciardo's quotes about it, but it wasn't a deliberate thing. So I think penalty for Stroll. And a good point actually as well, Stuart, about the warning under safety cars, maybe just letting drivers know they're not going to get away with it. Anything to add? I think that's kind of, I could waffle for days about decisions like this, because the FIA fascinate me. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. It was an innocent mistake, and it just happened to have pretty bad consequences, unfortunately. And I always think it's worth remembering that often when you have accidents and incidents and things like that, there's no perfect Stewart's decision that's going to solve everything. You're not going to get Ricciardo back in the race. You're not going to give someone the perfect punishment. I think they just work with what they've got, and I think their review made logical sense to me. So I think I'm okay with that.
Oh, do you want some conspiracy talk?
Go on.
Oh, go on, lad. Go on. I read that. I'm going to read you it again. So the Stewart's decision was... determined car 18 ought to have anticipated the pace of the cars in front, particularly car 3, and should have prepared to brake accordingly. Had he done that, it would have avoided the collision. Hence, car 18 was predominantly to blame for the collision that ultimately led to car 3 having to retire from the race. They've updated the decision. I don't have to say
I saw
a corrected decision. And they've removed the line Let me check it again. So it now says Stuart determined that car 18 ought to anticipate the pace of the cars in front, particularly car 3, and should have prepared to brake accordingly. Had he done that, it would have avoided the collision. Hence, car 18 was probably to blame for the collision that ultimately led to car 3 having to retire from the race. But I can't see what the... It's not really conspiracy talk. I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, when the FIA make a decision, then make a change, people get a bit over the top. So it's not really conspiracy, Stuart, so I'm sorry to disappoint you. But I'm trying to work out what the difference is.
I couldn't spot the difference either. I was flicking back between them, other than they've changed the distance between the lines.
Got it. I've got it. Sorry, no, it's not a big conspiracy at all. So they originally said 2 penalty points for a total of 4 for the 12-month period. It's now 2 penalty points for a total of 7 for the 12-month period. That's what they've changed. Sorry. I thought there was going to be more in that than that. Sorry, I saw a correction and got all excited and it's nothing.
Okay.
Wob, wob, wob. Fair enough. I will go over other decisions that come in. The other thing on Stroll, he was investigated for forcing another driver off the track, I believe.
Yes.
And they took no further action. That was Hulkenberg. So car 18 forced car 27 off the track at turn 6 was the fact. But they took no further action. Car was driven in a safe and controlled manner throughout the manoeuvre. And did not, in our view, deliberately force the other driver off the track at the exit. The line taken by car 18 was a natural line for that corner, and we could not expect 18 in these circumstances to have taken a different line to create further space for 27. So that's the decision on Stroll. I will come to other decisions, they are coming in, but that's the Lance Stroll stuff. But I think we're going to roll on from Lance Stroll. Well, I think I read his race notes, didn't I? So that's all right. But overall for Aston Martin, disappointing with Stroll. I guess to summarise, Alonso did a cracking job, all things considered. So that's not really a great surprise. Daniel Ricciardo, we'll do RB while we're here. We've talked about his quotes. Let's have a look. So did overtake his teammate on lap 19. Pitted shortly after. Didn't pit under the virtual set. Or pitted after Tsunoda, sorry. So fresher tyres. Didn't pit under the virtual safety car. All safety cars had to stop again when almost everyone else was expected to be going to the end. Told he had floor damage following the Stroll hit. I mean, no shit. He was rear-ended, for goodness sake. Pace was poor due to damage, just went backwards at the restart. Said no rear on exit, diffuser destroyed, and retired at the end of lap 33. And Yuki Tsunoda for the last point in RB. Slow first stop as he had to be held for Zhou coming in, kind of pulled away and had to then back out of that, didn't he? Which was interesting. Got to slam the brakes on, so there was no unsafe release there. Pitched another full safety car, spun at the restart after contact with Magnussen, damaged right rear, safety car deployed. I say spun. He was hit by Magnussen and put into a spin, and it damaged his car. But you know what I mean. But Magnussen got a penalty for that. I'm going to ask the question: do you put any blame on Tsunoda for that, or was that just 100% Kevin Magnussen being Kevin Magnussen? I guess.
Yeah, it was a overly ambitious. I think I didn't feel as strongly about it as Nico Rosberg seemed to feel. He was ready to throw him in jail for that and take his license away. But yeah, over ambitious and essentially put himself in a position where he was. I think he both sort of dive bombed alongside Tsunoda, but then just sort of kept with it through the corner. Like he could have backed out at one point, at any point within about 3 seconds there and not caused the collision, but decided to just keep pushing his luck until he ran wide into Tsunoda. So I think, penalty justified. I think he was in the wrong place and not alongside enough to start drifting out wide into him. So shame, big shame for RB because they lost both their cars in less than a lap, I think, from people crashing into them. So fun. I mean, they weren't having the best race, but they weren't having an awful race at the time.
No, I've not got much more on Tsunoda. Is there anything you've added, you've got on your notes or anything, Stuart? We saw a bit of him and he was involved in some scrapping. And like I say, that with Magnussen just destroyed his race and took him out of the race. But I do think, as you say, I was really interested to see what was going to happen because they were racing at one point. And obviously, Ricciardo on fresher tyres, Tsunoda on the older tyres. Ricciardo got through. I think Tsunoda had been pitted and undercut Ricciardo, and the question was whether they might slot them back if they needed to. I was really intrigued to see where those two ended up relative on track to each other come the end of the race. So I'm kind of disappointed that they were both taken out because I think that could have been a really fascinating scrap late on potentially. Although I think Ricciardo had the edge over Tsunoda this weekend. I don't think that's massively controversial, which is good to see for Danny Rick. But anything else to add?
I think had they not both retired, sort of through that safety car restart period, Tsunoda I think was going to be able to run to the end because he switched on to the hards, and Ricciardo was on a second set of mediums, so would still have to take another pit stop. I mean, we don't know how well Tsunoda would have managed those hards, but I think Ricciardo would have still had to make up another pit stop at that point. But that would have been interesting to see. They were on very different strategies throughout this race. But yeah, a shame for them. I don't think it cost them points or anything today. I don't think they were in for a shout for that. But yeah, expensive lap for them. Otherwise, normal pace for.
Yeah, I can't read them as a team. Generally, not just today, but generally, they're quite odd. But they seem competitive this year, which is good to see. But we have got quite a good fight kind of behind the top 5 teams. So every now and again, you get a Tsunoda breaks into that, and it's nice to see. But yeah, I've got nothing else on RB. I would check for quotes, but we'll do that in a bit. Haas, Nico Hulkenberg again. Not a lot on the Hulk, pitted under the full safety car. Magnussen got a left front puncher after contact with Tsunoda, went for the move at turn 6 to say, drove into Tsunoda. 10-second penalty for causing collision with the Tsunoda. Stewards say they found him predominantly to blame as he, and I quote, dived into the corner, braked late and collided with car 22 at the exit of the corner. Absolutely the correct call. I put no blame on Yuki Tsunoda. Not there'll be people who maybe be, well, he could have left more space. He left plenty of space. Magnussen just got it all wrong, hit him. These things happen again in Formula One. But I felt for Yuki. And again, I was intrigued to see where they ended up, but it's ultimately cost Magnussen as well. He ended up P16. Hulkenberg was P10, but he was under investigation. We do have a decision. I'm kind of hoping that the FIA aren't going to give me a headache here. No further action. There you go. On the Stroll one.
Yeah.
And the other one was allegedly overtaking under safety car conditions. There isn't one back for Hulkenberg yet.
Well, that was Sargeant overtaking Hulkenberg, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and he did get. That's what his time penalty was for.
He was summoned though as well.
I'm assuming to just give his evidence on that.
Sargeant got his 10-second penalty in the race, didn't he? For that one.
He did, yeah.
So I thought there was a separate one for Hulkenberg, unless I'm probably wrong, Stuart. Sorry. I thought he was under investigation for. I'm just double check.
He was. He was summoned, but I don't know if that's part of that. Logan Sargeant doesn't seem to be.
I think it was the one. I think if I've got it right from what Ted was saying in his notebook, Hulkenberg's under investigation for overtaking cars under the safety car when he was trying to avoid other cars in front with the braking incident with Ricciardo and Stroll and co.
Right.
So I think
that's just triggered something in the timing, is it?
But the point I was making on the FIA not making me get annoyed is I can't see if that is going to be any kind of proper investigation. I can't see how that is a penalty because I don't see how you can say, again, and quote, we determined that car 18 ought to have anticipated the pace of the cars in front. If you're then going to give a penalty because Hulkenberg did anticipate the pace of the cars in front, made an evasive manoeuvre, didn't hit them, and then gave the positions back. I know overtaking under the safety car is strictly forbidden, but if he's moving to the right to avoid hitting those in front, he's anticipated that moment, it'd be a bit ridiculous if he's then given the positions back to give him a penalty if you've then said Lance Stroll should have anticipated it and avoided it. It would be a little bit ridiculous, but I'm just trying to find because the summons it just says for overtaking under safety car conditions. The Sargeant one was interesting. I know which one you're talking about there.
Yeah,
but there is definitely a second investigation here because he was.
No, you're right. There is a summons document. I've got it on my computer, but all it says is alleged breach of Article 55.8 overtaking under safety car conditions. But the summons was for 6 p.m. local, which is ages ago. If I'm understanding how Chinese time works.
Well, it's currently, because I set my clocks up before race weekends, 7:48 in Shanghai, so it's nearly 2 hours. But like I said, I can't see how this is a penalty if he's done exactly what they wanted him to do. If you know what I mean.
I imagine we won't hear anything further than that famous last words.
Hopefully just a no further investigation or whatever, or no action, whatever they say. I'll keep an eye out on Twitter, because it'll be your Chris Medlands and that will report it before the FIA, and then I can let you know. But that was my understanding of it from what Ted was saying. Anybody in chat who... Oh, hang on, we're getting some decisions now. Here we go. Hang on. As I say that. By the way, if you ever want your FIA decisions, follow the FIA document bot on Twitter. They tend to post it. It's all automated. It's pretty good. So car 3 overtaking car 27 under safety car conditions. Okay. So driver car 3, Ricciardo, admitted that he overtook Hulkenberg, so it's different. Deliberately, but he explained that he felt that he could do so because car 27 had overtaken him under safety car before on lap 28. We note that car 17 was permitted to overtake Ricciardo on lap 28 because of Article 55.8. We'll have a look in a bit, but there was no justifiable basis for car 3, Ricciardo, to overtake car 27 while the race was under safety car conditions. We accordingly impose a 10-second time penalty on car 3, but as car 3 was unable to serve the penalty due to retirement, we impose a 3-place grid drop for the next race the driver participates in. So it's a 3-place grid drop for Daniel Ricciardo for Miami. So the incident I was talking about wasn't... So it sounds as though Hulkenberg has tried to avoid the incident and pass Ricciardo, and then Ricciardo's repassed Hulkenberg without permission and then got a penalty. Am I reading that right, Stuart? I'm just waiting for it to come through.
That's what I'm reading from it. It doesn't explain... I haven't got the car 27 one yet, because it hasn't explained why car 27 was permitted to overtake yet. I haven't got that explanation.
Unless I don't know. Yeah. Let's wait for them both to come in then.
So that's 2 drivers punished for overtaking Hulkenberg under safety car.
Lesson: don't overtake Hulk, or don't overtake under safety car. Don't overtake Ricciardo. So Ricciardo 3-place grid drop confirmed. We've also got the Alpine decision in. I'll get to that in a minute. We'll do that when we get to Alpine, and I'll keep an eye. They're all coming in now, so I'll keep an eye on that for Hulkenberg. But what did I say in my race notes? So just on the race itself, Stuart, anything you've got on Haas in your notes? Difficult with Haas, isn't it? They're one of them teams.
They're quite anonymous, aren't they? Other than the things we've discussed, they've already got involved in. I think it's worth noting they've once again got another point. They're sort of having this sort of consistently just sort of picking up a point. I don't think they did last race, but considering if we have to cast our minds back to the pre-season and the horror show they were having in testing and how they thought they're going to be dead last and they're going to have the worst season ever, or at least at the beginning, the fact they've just been able to kind of eke themselves into the points with pretty good consistency is good, and just keeps them up a little bit in the constructors standings until they're able to kind of maybe develop this car and put it to where they want to be. So yeah, I think they're having a better season than we maybe expected them to have, and that's kind of cool to see. Other teams are having a much worse season, but otherwise it's kind of business as usual for Haas. They had a pretty, strategy-wise, pace-wise, they're pretty good, but nothing exceptional to write about them other than that people kept overtaking Hulkenberg in the safety car, and Magnussen did a Magnussen.
Did what Magnussen does from time to time, yeah. And 4 points, by the way, it doesn't sound exciting, or 5 points, sorry, it doesn't sound thrilling and exciting, which is what Haas have. But in a field where, you can see the Constructors' Championship just popped up on screen. When you've got such a gap between the top 5 and the rest, if the top 5 cars all finish, they're likely to score points. So 5 points given that is actually really, really good. And I think Haas can be very, very happy with that, as can RB with 7 points. I will talk later if we get a chance as well about the apparently, Croft was saying in commentary, there's going to be a meeting between team bosses about points down to 12th place. Which is interesting, and I think that's one. Let's go all the way to 20. He was saying about we should give points to 20th place, and as you know, Stuart, I've said it many times, I'm very much against participation awards in sport. You're there to race and you're there to fight and compete, but 12th place, a couple of extra positions for the likes of RB and Haas and Williams and co to fight for. not a terrible idea, but I quite like half the field scoring. I agree with Nico Rosberg, who you know what it's like with his comments. But I do think Nico Rosberg's right that it should be difficult to get into points, because that's kind of the point, isn't it? You're there to race, but if there's such a gap between the top 5 teams and the rest of the field, then maybe they feel they need to do something. But we'll come back to that later. Let's do this. We'll come back to Haas if we get
thoughts.
He has thoughts. We will get back to it when the Haas incident is cleared up with Hulkenberg. Hopefully that'll come in soon. Alpine and co. Let's do the final 3 teams, and I'll read through my notes very, very quickly and see where we're at. So Alpine, Ocon may get a point if Hulkenberg gets a penalty, but I don't think Hulkenberg's going to get a penalty. He was 11th today. He pitted another full safety car. Really solid driver, not far off the points at all. In fact, he was 2.3 seconds off a point, which is as good as a win for Alpine at the moment. I was watching the timing screens actually and trying to see what he could do, but he was actually pretty close to Hulkenberg's pace, 0.3 quicker on the final lap as well. So really good driving from Ocon, and that's on the same tyre. So it's not like Hulkenberg had brand spanking new tyres or Ocon did. It was all on the same tyre, same pit stops, everything. So well done to Ocon today. 11th might not feel great, but I still think that's a really good result for Esteban Ocon. And Pierre Gasly, he felt Albon pushed him off at turn 14. Stuart didn't have a look. He had a 19.3 second first stop though, because his tyre wasn't on properly, and that popped off and hit a mechanic. Everyone was absolutely fine. But obviously that was a nasty moment there. He felt he was pushed off by Sargeant again on lap 51, different driver, but still felt he was pushed off again at turn 14. And the decision on the stewards for the potential unsafe release, no great surprise here. Alpine have been fined €10,000. The rear right tyre had not been fitted properly. The electronical system that monitors if a tyre was properly fitted did not pick that up. In addition, a team member incorrectly clicked the button to release the car despite the tyre not being fitted. As soon as the team realised the problem, they stopped the car and prevented the car from leaving the pit box. In all of this, a team member fell backwards and was lightly injured. So, okay being not badly injured, but lightly injured. The team member was able to continue with his duties for the rest of the race. It was clear to us the driver was not at fault. He was given a green light and he released the clutch and moved the car forward. However, he immediately stopped the car when the light turned red. So that's a €10,000 fine, because Alpine were found wholly responsible for what transpired, is what they've said there. So that's my notes on Alpine and what the FIA had to say. I will say, Stuart, I mean, I'll let you have your stand in pits, of course, and you can give me your thoughts on Alpine's race, but I do want to say, just overall on Ocon and Gasly, I think they're doing about all they can in those cars, and I think they're actually, as drivers, doing a very good job, all things considered. And, you know, when you consider that Ocon had the newer, updated car that's a little bit lighter, Gasly wasn't all that far behind come the end of the race on a fresher set of tyres, yes, but still not all that far behind. So I think both drivers doing a really good job given what they're having to drive, basically.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and it's a bit of it's always a shame for drivers when they get masked a lot by the cars they're in, and sometimes it's hard to really judge what it is they're doing because the car's such an enigma. But I will say, I'm kind of buoyed by the progress Alpine are making. Then obviously they're not doing great. They're not scoring points yet, but they're not where they were at the beginning of the season. They are, because let's face it, they were dead last. They were having serious issues, and they're now starting to work their way up the bottom and into the midfield, and actually have some, for where they are, quite decent pace. They're mixing it in with teams they weren't able to mix it with before. So I'm glad that we're seeing some progress from Alpine, and I think, to be honest, this year that's really what we can hope for from them, for them to figure out what's up with this car, make some progress, and set themselves up for a better 2025, which is, you know, I think that's all we could have hoped for from the very beginning of the year in testing. But yeah, I think we saw some good performances from them today. Gasly, of course, being his usual kind of quite angry self whenever he gets into a scrap with somebody. But yeah, I think they're doing a great job with what they're given, as you say, and I think it's a little bit hard to know what they're doing exactly. I think this is the kind of language I used when Haas had that die year with Schumacher and Mazepin. It was like I can't judge how well these guys are doing because there's like no benchmark for them because they're all in a world of their own in a terrible car. But that's kind of where they are right now, and it's nice to see they're able to mix it up with some of the cars, and we can see some racecraft and some pace and managing strategies, and seeing they are doing everything they're able to do.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, just super quickly back to Haas. There hasn't been a decision on the Hulkenberg thing, so either Ted's information was wrong or I've misinterpreted it. Because the final classification has been released by the FIA and Hulkenberg stays P10. So obviously that overtaking of the safety car thing was related to Ricciardo's move and not anything Hulkenberg did. So I think what Ted was saying was right, because I seem to recall seeing something on the footage. I might watch it back later. And if I'm wrong, then I'll say something. But I think I seem to recall Hulkenberg swinging out to avoid people, and maybe he's passed somebody and then let them back through, and Ted's assumed it was about that, and that's what I've picked up on. But the summons are crap, by the way. If you've ever seen a summons, it is literally just driver summons to stewards because they broke this article. It's like, well, but why? You know, there are no more specifics than that. There's no alleged for overtaking car 3 or alleged car 3 for overtaking car 27. It's a bit... You know, I suppose they have to be vague because they have to investigate it properly. But the final classification is out, is the point. Nico Hulkenberg keeps P10, so no penalty there. And obviously the document we were talking about for alleged overtaking the safety car was for Ricciardo, not for Hulkenberg. So just to clarify that one, rather than going back to it. But yes, that's how it is. That's how things stand. The result is as it is. Williams, sorry, I need to say Sauber. Williams, Albon. He was the one on the inside of Gasly, who Gasly felt squeezed in wide at turn 14. Slow right rear at the first pit stop. That cost him a bit of time. Pitted under the full safety car did Alex Albon. Logan Sargeant also pitted under the full safety car a lap later, but it didn't really affect anything. 10-second time penalty for safety car infringement. Reached the safety car line after Hulkenberg and didn't give the position back, is what I wrote in my notes. But now we have the decision on that one. I can tell you specifically what the stewards said. Car 20, it's exactly this. Car 27 was coming out of the pits and car 2 was approaching on the main straight at the safety car 2 line. Car 27, Hulkenberg, was ahead of car 2. Sargeant then overtook Hulkenberg and did not give the place back. That breached Article 55.8. So in commentary, they were saying, you know, he's done nothing wrong. What more could he do? They thought that it was too close to call. I managed to pause my skybox perfectly and could quite clearly see Hulkenberg got to the line just before Sargeant. Therefore, by the letter of the law, that's a penalty for Sargeant, but there wasn't an awful lot in it. And I feel like the stewards, you know, they've got to apply the rules, but you sort of think, oh, that's a lot. But the 10-second penalty and all of that, obviously, is the standard now. But it's, you know, the rule's been broken. It's a penalty. But it's not like he's gone steaming down the inside of him into turn 1 or anything like that, is it? But yeah, feel a bit for him, but it is a penalty by the letter of the law.
I think in that situation, if you're Sargeant, I don't think you can judge from the car.
No.
Where who's on the line, and you're not going to just capitulate. I think it's interesting that, I mean, I know race control are managing a safety car situation, so maybe they've got minds on other things. But as it's a timing line, it's interesting that doesn't just flag up automatically, and they don't just get onto the teams and say switch back because you're in the wrong position. And we could save ourselves a bunch of penalties, but I guess maybe that's not within their ability right now, but I think that would have been more useful if they were able to do that.
Warren does say, though, and it's a fair point, I agree with you, absolutely agree that Sargeant isn't going to know from the car about the white line, but Warren says Williams had time to get that position back, though. The team could have seen by telemetry, by GPS, and just with the naked eye that he didn't get there first. So they could have switched them back and told Sargeant to let him go, but you know, maybe they've just not had time to look at it. I don't know, but yeah, it's a penalty at the end of the day, isn't it?
I think now it's becoming incredibly clear. I mean, it should have been clear already from the teams because they know what the stewards are doing this year more than maybe we do. But I think if a 10-second penalty is the minimum thing you're going to get for like a small infraction, and if the Williams see their car come out marginally on the safety car line with another car, I would be double checking because trying to cheekily get away with it could have quite dire consequences. Whereas if it was just a 5-second penalty, you might be like, well, let's see if we can pull away.
I was just going to read you because I didn't say much on Alex Albon, just quickly what he had to say overall. So race was okay. Lower winds helped us. We were batting a lot of tyre degradation, though, throughout the race. Ultimately, didn't have the pace to overtake Ocon at the end. He was defending well. It goes on to say, we understand the problems with the car, but when they're not immediate fixes, and we will need a few upgrades to improve our performance. Looking forward to Miami. Car will suit us at that track much better, and I'm optimistic we can have a better result. Anything here from... so just Sargeant's reaction to that. So the penalty for the safety car infringement doesn't really matter in the end. From my perspective, I thought I crossed the line first, which is kind of what we said there, Stuart. When the cars are going at such different speeds, I don't know how I could have known the true order. So I think, like you say, Stuart, he's not going to know from the car. So we'll cut him the slack there. But the team, again, communicate people. And last, not really least, I think they did all right. Our Sauber, Zhou Guanyu was P14 today. Valtteri Bottas DNF quickly on Bottas, pulled over on lap 20 with mechanical issues, smoking rear, said engine is gone. Up to that point, I think racing well, but 20 laps, we're not going to get a full picture. Zhou pitted on the full safety car, 5.3 second safety car stop. 5.3 second safety car stop, that's what I'm trying to say. They were slow on the right fronts. 5.3 seconds, not good. 5.3 seconds for Sauber this year, exceptional. Fair enough. Late stop for the softs to try and get a point, but didn't really have enough time to close the gap. But his pace was strong. Zhou 41.1 on the final lap. Slower than Gasly, but quicker by 4 tenths than Albon, 5 tenths than Ocon, and 8 tenths than Hulkenberg. So he was pacey. In fact, just out of interest, he was also quicker than Piastri and Hamilton, just to let you know. So good speed there from Zhou. Left front wing end plate came off, which probably didn't help him either. He pulled out late to pass Magnussen, a little bit of contact. Apart from on his front wing, nothing really done there. I think there was contact. His front wing was flapping a bit in the race, so maybe there was something going on there anyway. But really, I guess the talking point with Sauber isn't actually Sauber, is it? The timing of the virtual safety car? ? Really strange situation. That one of the many reasons why the virtual safety car was introduced was for situations exactly like that. When you've got a car stopped at the end of a fairly decent length straight, let's say, a vulnerable position, and the driver's got out the car, is replacing the steering wheel, and we've got cars coming towards them, yes, under double wave yellows, but we've seen what drivers think of double wave yellows in the past. That's the moment you deploy the virtual safety car. I'm just very surprised it took so long, and then the car was stuck in gear and they couldn't move it, so that's part of the safety car anyway. So I think that virtual safety car needed to be out within sort of 20 seconds, if that, of the car stopping. I thought it was quite obvious looking at that was in a vulnerable position. And then when Bottas got out the car and you got cars coming towards him, you think, oh, bloody hell, what are we doing here? So I don't know if the button had got stuck to trigger the virtual safety car, or the race director had fallen asleep. I don't know, but really curious. And there'll be a lot of people that will say in the comments afterwards, or on social media, well, nothing happened. Yeah, but that's not the point, is it? It could have done. And that's why the virtual safety car is there, is to neutralise the race in those situations rather than needing the full safety car. Of course, we needed it in the end, but at that point, you're assuming they can roll it away. You put out the virtual safety car. But that was way too long to wait, Stuart. I'm glad Jonty's not here. He'll be on a right rant.
Yeah, I mean, this is the entire point of the virtual safety car, because you can do it, you can trigger it immediately, and there's no massive consequences. You don't have to suspend the race like with the safety car. You don't have to restart it. You don't have to go through a lengthy process to get things back to normal. You can trigger it quickly, especially if there's some question over how long it's going to take for that car to get going or get moved out of the way. If it becomes apparent pretty quickly that actually they can Bottas has got off the track, or they can move that car quickly, or he can get going again or something, they can just turn it off again. It has the consequences of triggering a virtual safety car are almost nothing really. It may change some pit stop strategies, but other than that, so I think, as you kind of say, I think it should be there to just turn on while there's a hint of danger. We're not entirely sure what's going on. Do we need to go to a full safety car? Unsure. Let's just calm things down in a way that forces drivers to calm down. The flags should do that, but they aren't necessarily as strictly obeyed as a virtual safety car has to be, because that's monitored by data. And there's no, and this isn't the first time that we've seen delayed on virtual safety cars. They seem to be quite hesitant to pull them out for reasons I don't really understand.
Baffling, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's just a weird decision, and we've seen. I know Jonty, for example, has a very different view of this. I don't generally have a problem with the safety car being delayed. We see it in F2 quite a lot. If there's an accident at turn 1, lap 1, I don't have a problem with the safety car being delayed for half a lap to let people keep racing. I know his argument, and it's a fair argument, is the problem is then you're risking more incidents, which takes longer to clear up and puts more people at risk. I get that. But I don't have a problem with that. But when you've got a driver in that situation with cars coming towards him, the virtual safety car needs to be out straight away. And like you say, it can have an impact in terms of strategy because people get a cheaper stop, but it doesn't destroy people's races like a full safety car might. So there's no reason why you can't throw a virtual safety car almost immediately. It's baffling. So hopefully something the FIA will look at, but it's the FIA. So yeah, final point on Sauber. I hope they can keep they've got speed in that car. Is the point I wanted to make, and I hope that they can get through a weekend without pit stop dramas or car issues or whatever, and getting caught out with bad luck. And hopefully they'll be in a good position for points at some point in this season. But I do think we've seen this weekend again. The car's got some good pace in it, and it was nice as well at the end to see Zhou Guanyu getting a bit emotional in front of the crowd and being able to sort of wave to his fans. It was a little bit curious. Is Sargeant going to get that in Miami, or do we think that is just because it's been so long since it's been to China? First Chinese F1 driver, I think, to race in China. Big deal. Let's make a big fuss of that. And fair enough and rightly so. That's not a criticism, but I do wonder if that's something we're getting at every race for home Grand Prix drivers, which makes Silverstone interesting. Or is it just a one-off because it has been so long since it's been to China?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I had absolutely nothing against it. It's just sort of interesting at what would trigger focusing in on a home driver or a particular driver or something. I think it worked well here. I think they judged it right. And maybe it's all part of this, welcoming F1 back to China and Zhou finally getting able to actually drive in front of his home crowd because he's been here a while. And playing into what is essentially a huge market, which F1 loves. And on a sort of side note, I think Karun Jantok was quite right that Formula One kind of dropped the ball with India, which is another huge market that they could have played with. But yeah, I think that's essentially what was going on here. And maybe we won't see it with Logan Sargeant. Maybe Logan Sargeant would want to see it in Miami. But I think there is a bit of a novelty with China because it doesn't have a huge. Yeah, Zhou being the only driver they've managed to get into Formula One, and it's sort of that being a novelty and a thing to celebrate, I think is comes into play here as well.
Yeah, and our just to round this off, says in chat, the Chinese fans had a really fun and enthusiastic energy throughout the weekend. Absolutely, they you can tell it's been 5 years for them, bless them. They were hungry for F1 and they really, really enjoyed it. Just to let you know, pole was Verstappen, obviously. Sprint top three, Verstappen, Hamilton, and Perez. Fastest lap went to Alonso today, so bonus point for him. And driver of the day for Lando Norris. If you have any questions, please do pop them in chat. We'll do 15, 20 minutes of answering questions and making other waffly points, and we'll answer some of your questions. Please do drop a like as well. 269 here, 102 likes. Please do leave a like. Always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe as well for more content in the coming weeks. There's a lot coming up this season. If the channel can survive it, there's a lot coming up this season. Let's leave it at that. Let's not get into that today. Just very quickly as well on the polls that we did today. Do you agree with Stroll getting a penalty? Yes, no, I'm torn. Yes, but 5 seconds. 85% say yes, 5% no, 5% torn, and 2% of you think yes, but it should have been 5 seconds. And on the other poll, rate the 2014 Chinese Grand Prix. Good was 48%, average / okay 34%, great 10%, and bad 5%. Thank you for your votes today. We had something we wanted to come back to, Stuart. I can't remember what it was. Just what
it was someone's comment, wasn't it? Like about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'll see if we can. We'll come back to that. Oh, I just remembered as well. Points. The points change very quickly. That's apparently going to be floated. I've read. I believe the proposal is that everything stays the same. First to, I think it's 6th or 7th. And then it's going to sort of be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 down to 12 pace. So you'll be 25, 18, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Which isn't that drastic a change, really. It is 2 more points paying positions, but it's not like you're giving extra points to the winner or closing the difference between the winner and the second place and things like that. I think the first point I want to make on points, winning the race should net you a decent amount of points more than the person in second place. when we used to have 10 and 8, we often saw drivers who could go for a bold move, not go for it because, I'm only losing 2 points. In the championship, it doesn't matter. Whereas if there's 7 points at stake, they're more likely to have a go. So I think having that is enough incentive, I guess, to go for the win. Honestly, if we're increasing the points paying positions, I would rather see it in the sprints and do 10 for the win down to 1 point for 10th place. But, whatever. They're looking at this, Stuart. What are your thoughts? I'm not overly enthusiastic about it, but I can't sit here and tell you that I'm absolutely opposed to it because it is only 2 more points paying positions. And again, they've not really shuffled the points too much.
I will say I don't care that much about them changing the points. I'm not that bold. I totally agree with you. I think first place should have a healthy bonus of points, and then second to, I think the way it sort of the amount more points you get for the first 3 or 4 places. What am I saying? You get a healthy bonus for first, and then a little bonus for second, and so on until it starts sort of going down by 2. I think that kind of thing is right, as you sort of said, to incentivize people to go for the podium positions. I disagree about. I think I'm perfectly happy with points going to every single position. And my reason is I don't necessarily view points as being a prize. Like I think being rewarded for coming. I see it as being rewarded for coming 13th or 15th or whatever. I think having points go all the way through the field is just an easier way of demarcating where people finished across the season. So if if you had a few 16 places, that will get you more points than if you sort of were in 18th or 19th. I think it's just an easier way of noting in point form how you finished across the season, rather than basically if you finish below the top 10, it's only decipherable by countback. So I'm quite happy with that, as long as the points at the top are much higher than the points sort of lower down. I'm not that precious about points being a sacred thing you have to earn. Although I would say if you DNF'd, you don't get any points, even if you DNF'd to 20th or whatever. That remains in place. So yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly happy with it. I don't care that much. I think it's I think going down to 12th is just as arbitrary as going down to 10th. If I'm perfectly honest, it's not gonna
that big of a
change the world. It's going to annoy stats people because once again we're having another change in the points, but the points have changed so much over the Formula One's life. I don't think it makes that much difference. We've lost all consistency. So yeah, I'm very whatever about it. But I feel like if we're going to get that way, we may as well just go further, to be honest.
Yeah, kind of, if you're making the change, just do it for everybody, kind of thing. But I just on your point of DNF thing there, could you imagine if we did give points to if they went for every driver gets a point per position, whatever that works out at, and you had, let's pick 2 drivers at random. Let's say Alonso and Norris are going for the title, and Norris needs 1 point to win the championship, so he just pits and DNFs. Could you imagine that? Like, oh dear. Also, Alonso versus Norris for the title. That could be fun. Yeah, no, I'm just not a. When it comes to sport, I think points should be earned, but then you have made me sort of, or give me something to ponder, in that actually from a championship position point of view, points down to 20th does make sense, because at least then, like you say, we have a defining line of who's where rather than who's had the most 12th place finishes. Which is, I suppose, is basically a point in itself, isn't it? If you had a higher finish, you basically get a point for that. You don't actually get a point, but you would finish ahead of the guy behind, so you're getting an extra point effectively. So you may as well give the point. So I kind of, you give me something to ponder, but I've always been very much, particularly in sport and very much around F1, that it should be difficult to get into points, but I should ponder that.
I think it's different tastes about how you feel about that. I think
it's fine to disagree. We're not going to argue about it. I hate you.
Yeah. I think some people would absolutely hate it. I think some people would be aghast at giving points to 20th place as long as you finish, but I don't know. That's my personal feel. I'm not that precious about it.
Be interested if they go ahead with it, but again, like I say, whichever way they decide, if they decide to go down to 12th place, it's not that big of a deal. They're not suddenly giving the winner 30 points and the driver in 10th place 10 points. It's going to be instead of going down in twos, it's going to go down in ones down to 12th place. It's not that big of a deal. But actually, in a season like this, where it looks like we've got 5 clear faster teams, having those extra points paying positions for Williams and Alpine and Haas and RB and Sauber, that could be handy. Because we could be in a situation this year where all those teams end up in single digits and a million miles away. And I know that's just the way F1 works, but it just feels like that might be an easier way to deal with it. But yeah, we'll leave it there now. The question, which Vesk has put back in chat, thank you very much, Vesk, says, and I've lost it again. Where have you got? Yeah, there you go. Are Ferrari regretting their decision about Lewis in any way? I don't think so, because whatever is going on at Mercedes, it's still a 7-time world champion. It's still Lewis Hamilton, and that's the final hurrah. It's a big moment for Ferrari to get in there. It's a big moment for Hamilton to go there. But I do wonder if they may be questioning the driver they've decided to keep, and that's as a Charles Leclerc and Ferrari fan, because I will defend Leclerc, because naturally, Sainz has had a much better start to the season. There's no doubt about that. But also, Sainz didn't have to deal with the issues that Leclerc had in Bahrain, for example. So I know Sainz missed an entire race. I understand that. But also, just saying Sainz had a better start to the season than Leclerc, whilst true, doesn't take into account some of the struggles that Charles Leclerc has had. That's a very flippant Twitter response. I prefer to look at things a bit more deeply than, oh, he finished 6th or whatever. There's always more to it in Formula 1, but Sainz has been brilliant. And I do wonder if they are looking at it more thinking, should we have kept Sainz? But I guess Leclerc's their lad, isn't he? He's their young driver. They love him to bits. They've brought him through. They've supported his career. He's shown many times in Formula 1 already in his career that he's a very, very quick driver. And on his day is absolutely fantastic out there. So I think backing him, he's a younger driver as well, backing him is the right thing to do. But I do wonder if there are some in Ferrari going, should it have been Sainz and Hamilton next year? But I can't see them regretting signing Lewis Hamilton. That seems a bit... I know what Veski's getting at, but it feels a bit... I don't know what I'm trying to say. I can't see how they'd regret that.
I feel like maybe regret is the strong word, but I think looking at how the season is playing out, and I mean, they probably not a realization because they knew this, but I think it's reinforced just how strong their driver lineup is. Sainz and Leclerc are really good, and they're quite well matched, and they know the team. They're working really well together, and I think. At the same time, Hamilton is not having a good season, and he's struggling quite a bit. Like it's not all his own fault. There's that team is in a bit of disarray, and that car is a mess. But he's not formidable right now. And again, the as we spoke about other teams, the car is masking what he's doing. And we don't know if he's pulling out incredible drives with what he's given or not. I think we're seeing a mixed bag from Lewis Hamilton, whereas these first, how many races we had? 5 races and a sprint have been just really, really great for these two drivers. Well, I guess 4 races because Sainz was only in 4 of them. But so I think if not regret, I'd be like, maybe we jumped the gun too soon, because I think if they hadn't made the decision pre-season, and they'd let these 5 races go out and then thought, should we take Lewis Hamilton? I don't think they would make the same decision. I don't think they would right now at this moment. I think they'd say these 2 drivers are just who we need right now, I think.
What I would say is, and it's a point that I made last year when we were talking in another stream about Sainz's future. I didn't think last year. I didn't think over the winter. And whilst the idea of Hamilton to Ferrari is exciting for a lot of people, I thought at the time I don't think Ferrari needed to make the change. And that ignore the first 5 races of this season. Looking at last year, I don't how Sainz has been with Leclerc, the relationship they have, the way they've worked well together, the speed they both have, the fact that both Leclerc is the younger of the two marginally, I'm just going to double check that fact because if it's like 30 years, I'll feel a fool. Sainz is 29, Leclerc is 26, so he's a few years younger, but it's still a relatively young lineup. I mean, Fernando Alonso's racing until he's 72, by the sounds of it. So it's a relatively young lineup. So I didn't think they needed to make the change, but I do. Is it just a case that Lewis Hamilton is one of those drivers that when they become available, you sign them, or if they make themselves available, you sign them. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I think that makes it easier to kind of maybe jump the gun a little bit and go, oh, we need that because that's a great driver. We need him right now. Whereas actually the more time goes on and the more you sort of think about it, especially as you sort of see, just results and things, you start to think, well, what were they trying to achieve by signing Lewis Hamilton? Because even if you don't think about Sainz for the moment, but you sort of think, Leclerc's been their star driver in the making for a while. That seems to be who they're counting on for the future. Hamilton's at the end of his career, so you're going to get him for 2 or 3 years, maybe. You'd built up a great relationship with Sainz. It just seemed like what were you trying to solve in getting Lewis Hamilton? Like, if he's really good, you're going to disrupt Leclerc, or do you want him to be like a Perez to your Leclerc? Where do you want him to fit in that team in this kind of short term? You're going to have him at the end of his career. It seems weird. And I mean, I'm excited for it, obviously, and I think obviously Hamilton has made the right decision for himself. But it just, now it's sort of sinking in. It just seems like a strange choice to make.
Yeah, Hamilton is having 0 second thoughts.
Nope,
not a one. No, that's fair. And it's not a criticism of. We're not saying he's past it, he's useless, he's a crap driver, or anything like that. It's just looking at the way, like Stuart said, his first 5 races have gone. Would they have looked at it differently if Hamilton had not committed so early to Ferrari and they'd not taken him so early? Would they now look at it and go, actually, Lewis, thanks, but we're happy with what we've got? Really fascinating to see where Sainz lands, actually. Just very quickly, very off topic, Damon Hill.
Yes,
such a cheeky old man. I love him. Says, well, after 2 weekends of getting up at midnight to stand in a brightly lit room all night to present F1, Sky Sports F1 from a studio in West London, I know what I think, but what do you? You're the ones who count. 11.7% think no way. 11.7% think that this is the way forward for Sky. 88.3% say it's not the way. And I'm judging by the tone of if you could retone into a tweet of David Hill's tweet, or X post, whatever you want to call it, he's not a fan. And do you know what, Damon? I absolutely agree. I think, looking at it from a purely selfish point of view, my Sky package, because the way I have to have it as an existing customer, because I don't get the advantages of being a new customer, I have to pay £28 for the base Sky package and then another £25, and that's on offer, for the Sky Sports package to get F1. That's a lot of money for me to then tune in and see the hosts and everyone couldn't be asked to go out to China and Japan. And I know they'll talk about carbon footprint, but if it is all about carbon footprint and not cost saving, then don't go to any races. Just stay in the studio. So I think there is.
And they're still going. There's still people there. It's not like
exactly. You've still sent the flight with people on. So why not just send everybody? So I think it is a price cutting thing rather than whatever they want to jazz it up as. But what I will say, in Sky's defence, Japan was better than Australia and China was better than Japan. But nothing beats Simon Lazenby having to scream on the grid, or Martin Brundle having to shout on the grid in a team principal's ear as the jets go overhead. That whole atmosphere, that's part of the build-up for me. So the Sky Studio thing does not work. I don't know what it was. But I remember when ITV used to do it, it didn't feel that flat. Whether that's because it's just we became used to that on ITV and so become used to the way Sky do it and we don't like change as F1 fans. I don't know if that's what it is partly, but it didn't feel that flat on ITV.
I'll tell you one thing. I know the ITV studio wasn't always like this, but and it came to me when I was looking at Channel 4's coverage, because Channel 4 also don't fly out to all the races and will sometimes do things from team garages and stuff. It was very much in a dark box that felt like it was in a basement or like Saw's lair or something. Whereas just the simple thing of having exactly simple things of having maybe windows behind you and just like the sense that you're sort of part of the world aesthetically has a lot of difference. I think that is sort of part of it. But they did sort of feel like they were in like just in a virtual world, being as opposed to connected in any way to what was going on. I also think, and it was particularly evident this weekend, the people they chose to send weren't the right people to fill out all the roles they needed. Not having I don't think so. I think I like Nico Rosberg's insight and he's very good at knowing these modern cars, and I think he's got a lot of interesting things to say, and I think a lot of people enjoy his opinions. I think your mileage varies on that, but I don't think he excels as sort of being the pit lane guy, being the interviewer guy, the sort of guy wandering around with the mic who does all the stuff on the scene. I don't think that's his role, and I think the people they've sent out there haven't necessarily filled out who you need to be out there. And I think they've got enough people. Like Simon Lazenby has an alternate in Natalie Pinkham, so you could send one of them there, and Ted Kravitz and Karun Chandhok will often sort of share that sort of more technical pit lane role. They've got enough people to send at least one of those people out there to do stuff, and I just don't think they filled those roles properly. So every time they were throwing back and forth, it wasn't quite working as well.
Dell says in chat, windows somewhat work in a city centre, but if it's an industrial zone, not so great. I don't know if you meant. I suspect you don't mean it literally, but I think you can have. ITV used to have a shot of the racetrack or the atmosphere in the background behind them when they were sat at a desk. So although that wasn't a literal window, it still at least was a window into wherever they were racing at the time. So I think there's ways to do it without a literal window. But it just, again, it just the whole thing fell flat. It didn't feel like there was any atmosphere. It was so obvious as well. I don't know if you noticed, because I don't know if Crofty was on site. I don't know if he was commentating from the UK as well. I think he was. I may be wrong. But when they go to Mike Crack on the pit wall, they'd ask him a question and then you'd have to wait for the delay. And it just all felt really disconnected, and I didn't like it at all. And I think for the money you charge, if you're sending the plane with Ted Kravitz and co on it anyway, get the people on it to cover it from on site. You can cut back your staff on site if it's about costs. You can take fewer people. But if you're going to take fewer people, please, please, please ensure, Sky, and I'm begging you for this, that you put Ted Kravitz and Craig Slater together more often in the pit lane.
Yeah,
because that was quite the experience. Quite a lot of fun to watch.
Did you read that the way I did? And
yes.
Ted Kravitz was infuriated that Craig Slater was there. He was just trying to get through his script, and Craig Slater kept asking questions and trying to interact with him. And Ted was like, I've got these bullet points I need to get to. Stop interrupting me.
There was this point where Ted kind of waved the camera towards the garage whilst he was talking, and I have in my head that whilst he was saying his bullet points, he got Craig Slater by the scruff of the neck and was like, "This is my patch, bitch," or something like that. I don't know. Back off. Sorry. It just. I don't know for sure if Croft was on site. I thought he wasn't, but I may be wrong.
I'm going to assume he must have been, because he was commentating with Nico Rosberg, and then Nico Rosberg wandered off to go to do the interviews, and Karun Chandhok came up. So I think they were all there in the commentary booth. I don't think Crofty would put up with not being able to go. I think he put his foot down.
No, but there was a point in commentary as well where Crofty said Nico's got to run off now to the to do the interviews, and I believe in thinking back now on my moronic comment, thinking back now, didn't he say in qualifying as well, he put his hand out the commentary box window, it just started to rain, so he was there. Sorry, I just had it, I think because of the delay it felt like he wasn't there, whether they just, maybe they was really far away from Mike Crack. I don't know. I'm trying so hard to say Mike Crack. So Crofty was there, sorry, just to confirm. I apologise. I read it wrong and I forgot a couple of things happened over the weekend. It happens, it's my brain.
But that's the thing, right? If you've got one team in the black box and
Black
and
box.
you don't see Crofty at any point because you saw everyone else who was on site. I don't remember seeing Crofty in front of a camera at any point. So it's kind of like you kind of just doubt who's where, what's real, who's a simulation.
This will mean nothing to most people, but I was going to say a bit like RuPaul in Drag Race Down Under. Was he there or wasn't he? Sorry, if you don't watch it, you'll have no idea what I'm on about.
I'm sure some people will get that. I will say there was one good thing I liked about the black box that wasn't worth the entire experience. But when Karun did his sort of lap comparison thing, he had like this. He had the big screen which had the onboard of I think Perez with a sort of ghost Verstappen kind of showing you through the lap, and he had the thing on the floor that was like showing them on the track map. And I thought that worked well, and you could only do that in the black box because you needed the screen on the floor and you needed the screen on the wall. But other than that, like, yeah, SkyPad's fine.
Yeah, it's not for me. Definitely not for me. Were there any other questions? I thought we had something else we needed to discuss. I'll tell you what I'll do then, very, very quickly, before we round off, unless I spot something big in chat that we missed that anyone wants to talk about. I'll throw this on screen. The 2025 calendar. Since we were last live, has been announced, Stuart. And it's...
Oh, yeah.
It's... Well, there was an attempt. It's definitely better than it used to be. I've got to say, looking at that start to the season, I cannot fathom why we have a triple header of Japan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. And if you need a triple header, why we don't have a triple header of Australia, China, and Japan. Because we had the gap between Japan and China this year as well, the 1 week in between, I'm not sure whether is there some kind of visa thing or is there some kind of logistical reason why we can't go straight from China to Japan or Japan to China. So maybe there's something in there I don't know about. But to me, if you've got to have a triple header in the first 5 races, having Australia, China, and Japan together makes more sense than Japan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. It also makes a hell of a lot more sense to try. I don't know how, because I know people said before about the weather and how difficult it is, but to try and put Miami and Canada together. Why are we doing Saudi Arabia, week off, Miami, week off, Imola, Monaco, Spain, week off, Canada, week off, Austria? I don't know about anybody else, but if I'm going to travel from Spain to Austria, I'd generally go from Spain to Austria. I wouldn't go via Canada, Brazil. Let's pop off to Japan on the way. Why not? So that's a weird one for me, and I still don't know, Stuart. Again, I will let Harry say. I'm not just going to keep waffling, by the way, but I'm not sure why we have a 2-week gap, if you like, 2 free weekends between Silverstone and Spa, given that we're so close to summer break and they're not that far apart, really. Speaking relatively, back end of the season looks the same, but not quite a stop-start, and we end with Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi as a triple header, and Brazil standalone this year as well, which is an interesting one. But yeah, thoughts on the calendar and the waffly points I've made there, Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, you mostly covered it. It's a lot of the same things we talk about every year. Why are some races clumped together in the way they are, and some races not? Why are there weird gaps where there could be good runs? I mean, there's a lot of things that do make sense. The way they've paired races off, whether they're back to back or not, makes sense. They're slowly trying to sort of group things into areas. Canada obviously continues to be the standout. We've got 6 races, if I got this right, in the Americas now. So there's no reason we really couldn't do like 2 groups of 3 if we can get the seasons right on things. I don't, there's ways around of doing this. I mean, we could get Brazil up there early with like Miami and Canada or whatever if we're not going to have it at the season finale.
Well, it used to be the second race, didn't it? Brazil back in.
Yeah, we could move these things around. So yeah, I don't. Sam, but it's kind of fine. I still don't like that we go to Abu Dhabi last, but I guess we're stuck with that, aren't we?
Chat just talking about Canada being their winter around Miami in May, so they couldn't do that. But is there? I don't know if it's ludicrously hot a month later in Miami, but could we not have, Miami? Well, how would that work out? Stick with me a second. Miami on the 1st of June and Canada on the 8th or something. it's only a month between Miami and Canada there. So I mean, I don't know if there's a reason. I'm not good with that kind of thing. I don't know logistically or what the weather's like in those places, but that feels like a no-brainer to me. And like you say, if there was a way to squeeze Brazil in there somehow, I don't know if you could. It used to be the second race of the season around April time, so there might be a way to do that. But then you are still going to Europe and then back to the Americas. But then I suppose it's better to do 2 or 3 than it is to just do 1 and then come back. But I think Canada always seems to be on or around the same day every single year. So I think that's a contractual thing. But I also agree with what you said a couple of weeks ago, Stuart, that I still suspect Miami will eventually just disappear. Eventually, I think of the 3 races in the USA, that's the one I would have a question mark around long term. It's here for a few years yet, but I think eventually that'll be the one that drops, definitely. But yeah,
it's not one the fans over. I think you'd think it had from the promotion that F1 give it, but I feel like everyone goes, it's very silly, the race is boring, and it costs $2,000 to get a ticket. So, and we're driving around a car park. We've dressed up the car park very nicely, but it's still a car park, and there's lots of other places we could be going in the world, and especially now, yeah. But with Vegas now on the calendar, it seems like what's the point of Miami at all?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Let's quick scroll through this one. Nothing. So I just got the Red Bull press release. So just make sure I've not missed anything they want to talk about. Verstappen. I love it. First line of Max Verstappen's quotes. I think today went really well.
He's not wrong.
Thanks for that. That's great analysis there, Max. I'm going to say that one. Car was very well balanced. Every time we needed to be quick, we were, and it felt much more consistent to drive in comparison to the sprints. Even for the restarts and overall, I'm really pleased. Checo, safety car cost us a little bit today. It would have been close, but unfortunately it came at the wrong time for us and put us on the back foot, and we lost 2 places. Fighting with Charles damaged my tyres. I think we touched on that earlier. A little too much, and it made it hard. The level of degradation, sure, grow up, was a little too trying on this track and make better progress, so we struggled. I wanted more today. I did expect a little more from the race. The sprint looked very promising, but today we were not able to capitalise on that. Made some changes as well that potentially took away from their performance. So those are what Checo and Max Verstappen has said. So Verstappen's analysis, I think it went all right. I had a good race. I think it was okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. One quick super chat. NC Paddock F1, thank you very much for your super chat. It says 58 race wins and 37 pole positions at the age of just 26. Yes, the car is quick. Yes, there's more races, but Max isn't wasting the talent he was born with. Absolutely agree. And I do need to do a couple, I think 1 or 2. Let me just double check, because somebody popped what are they called now, Stuart? I don't know if I think these may have come in since your last upload, so you might not have heard of these, but I think they're called super thanks. You can give money in comments now, apparently. So thank you very much I'll just use your first name. I know who you are. To Ed for your contribution last stream. I think it was in the comment section. Really appreciate support. So thank you very much, Ed. I'll give you a shout out because I can't. As much as I love you all, I can't go live just to do a quick shout out. So I thought I'd save it for this stream. So thank you very much. Couple of quick comments and then we'll round it off. Is it Chicago that's been slated to replace Miami? Says Warren. I think the Chicago thing's got a bit quiet, but it was close, or it was discussed. Sorry. Is Alonso now on 9 points and getting close to a race ban? Fernando, he is close to a race ban, isn't he? Yeah, is it 8? I think it's 8. I've got in my head. Just to be awkward.
I thought it was 9, but I'm not sure.
Let me just double check.
Oh, yeah, that was something that crossed my mind when I saw that as well. And the eternal question I have of whether the FIA have the guts to actually give someone a race ban, because we keep seeing people get close and then all their penalties start to fizzle out. So I'd be interested to know if because he got 6 in the last couple of races. If he gets another 3-point penalty, then that's bad.
We're all wrong. It's 6 for the 12-month period.
Oh, I thought he got 6 just in the last 2 races.
Some must have expired back end of last year that I've missed. Yeah, it's 6. unless they've corrected it again because they're having one of them weekends. Let me just double check.
Sargeant has 8.
Yeah, Sargeant. I knew Sargeant. I knew somebody was on 8. Yeah, he needs to be careful.
Okay.
Like I say, interesting if they ever would put out a race ban though. We need a Kyalami race, says Aquad Leon. Would love to see us back at Kyalami. Kevin says too bad they won't come to Toronto. Yeah, I don't know what Toronto's like. If it street-wise, it'll be the thing is it'll be a street race. Wherever we end up, it'll be a street race because that seems to be their obsession this year, or these last few years at least. And Vesk says Miami still hasn't sold out, which doesn't sound that good. But then, to be honest, Vesk, I'm not surprised given the prices they charge. Also, they just get a load of celebrities there. So they actually just get them for free anyway. So I know very quickly, Stuart, you were quite impressed with Kota realising they sold their tickets too cheap. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. And demanding that, or asking people to give their tickets back for a price and then they're going to sell them on for more.
Very cheeky. Someone has mucked up there. I said this to a friend of mine who used to run sort of events and PR and stuff, and they said that's a thing, not them personally, but the people they work for have done before once, where they've completely misjudged like the early bird prices of things and how that would go, and realized how much money they were going to lose. And they said, oh, maybe they should have tried that. So, well, good luck to Kota. I mean, if people want to sell their tickets for a quick buck, only see them sold back again for 3 times the price. Good luck to them.
I did like the replies to that. People sort of like, nope, see you later this year. Oh, people have seen a moment. Yeah, a bit of, is it ticket touting?
Yeah,
from Kota there. Good stuff.
Touted themselves.
We'll leave it there then, Stuart. Always good to talk to you, and hopefully Miami will be an absolute corker. We've said this a lot. I'm not a big fan of the Miami track, but you know it might grow. Maybe
it's juice. It's due a good race. It's juice. I mean, I'd love to see a great race there. I just haven't yet.
Yeah, it's early days yet. Hopefully a better weekend for Checo though than last year. And who knows, we might even have some confirmation of some more transfers before then, but we'll see. But yeah, thank you very much, Stuart. It's a pleasure as always, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Lovely. Take care, everybody.
Thank you to Stuart, and thank you, of course, to you guys for tuning in as well. I've updated the Patreon screen, which is good news. Finally, there you go. Yes, thank you very much for tuning in today. Please do leave a like before you go, by the way. 250 if you're still here, 122 likes. Let's get that a few more high. That'd be massively appreciated. And if you're watching this later, please feel free to drop a like as well. It helps support the channel, and it doesn't cost anything. It's free. Same with the subscribe button. And leave an emoji or something in the chat just to, tell me what you think of, I don't know. just leave a comment as well. It all helps the channel in the algorithm. So, yes, very good. And we'll be back, of course, very, very soon with some more content, as always. And obviously the preview and everything will be out for the Miami Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time. And then I think there's a week off. And then I think we hit the European race and it all just goes to hell. We get lots of races very, very quickly. So looking forward to that one. You can follow me on socials if you're interested as well. Feel free over there for what it's worth. But yeah, that's it. I enjoyed that. It was a nice stream. Thank you all for your company today. And yeah, I was going to say something. I had an idea. It came in my head and I'm not going to do it. Oh no, I'm not. It can be video. Thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye. Cliffhanger.